And just like that, the fat guy made it back to actually doing something on YouTube. What is up, everybody? This is Jay, aka MultimediaJay, 7:03 at the Geek House on a Saturday night with absolutely beautiful weather, and I'm a moron sitting indoors messing around on the computer. Well, I did open the windows today and yesterday to actually, dry out the house and get everything, spring has sprung, so, get some fresh air in here. I mean, we've been cooped up all winter. Might as well do these kinds of things. That's a lot that's been going on. Had some stops to make yesterday. Still haven't gotten around to the chores for the week, so that will be after this. I talked a while back about doing more streaming in the early evenings, unless I'm playing games late at night or something like that. Doing more streaming in the early evenings and then working on videos at night when everything's quieter, because of course my YouTube camera doesn't have the kind of anti-noise features that the OBS setup does. Speaking of which, let's check the sound, make sure we didn't go all robot again on the YouTube side of things. The kind of good, I sound normal. We like that. I did test it by recording a video using OBS and then playing back the clip before going live. I really think it's because I was messing with my sound the other day that I screwed everything up like that. So yesterday, we had ourselves so yesterday there was some stuff to do. It's really a thing. The weekends aren't really weekends for me anymore. There's always there's stuff that's going on with things and whatnot. But one big thing that's going on, tonight we're about tonight, if we get the words right here, we are talking about Jay's Pandemi-Rants. CovidActNow decided to cave. That is probably the most time-sensitive thing on my list of things to talk about. We're gonna get that done tonight because I kind of feel a little lousy tonight because had a little too much fun with the weekend food, as it were. My usual diet these days is like chicken, vegetables, and peanut butter sandwiches. It's very, very simple. And so when I used to be an absolute fiend with skillet meals and Stouffer's dinners, but I'm finding when I switch back to the more complicated stuff after trying to eat healthier with simpler stuff that I just can't take it anymore. It's like a shock to the system to go from eating really basic stuff to try and, eat healthier. And then suddenly we're back to whatever's in your average Stouffer's lasagna these days or something like that. I mean, I have fun with food on the weekends. Kind of just have some fun and then get back to, eating healthier during the work week. So that way, if something like this happens, it's not on a work night. Gotta have your fun sometime, but you gotta be judicious about when you decide to have it. So we're going to do a little bit of recap and catch up on things before we get into the discussion. Probably have a jazz intermission and then come back for the main discussion about CovidActNow, switching over to the community levels for their maps. And oh man, let me tell you, where do I even start? Well, we'll start when we actually get to it. So there's a couple of things that are on the board as far as videos and streams go, and I just got more tech stuff. I have stuff sitting in the box once again. I have a tech video with one thing left to do to finish it off. Then we can edit it and upload it, sitting there for now weeks at this point, yet again. This is the kind of juggling that YouTube has turned into with its multi-format stuff with videos, streams, and short form these days. This is the kind of crap. This is the kind of crap that YouTube has become. It's just it's absolutely a blend of things these days. But it's like figuring out when to do what is huge in terms of getting this all to work right and stuff like that. And of course, the experimental nature of YouTube streaming and YouTube just plain not investing the resources into live streaming. This got ridiculous a long time ago, YouTube. Okay, you don't have a Fwiz anymore, but it wasn't because of a problem with YouTube. It was because he got an offer he couldn't refuse from a Web3 company. Get some leadership into your live streaming division if you want to actually have competent live streaming, because there needs to be somebody who, quite frankly, owns it. That's why you bring in managers. That's why you have a chain of command or an accountability tree, as some would call it. That's why. So you don't have situations like right now where executives are covering for the vacated position, but there's nobody that really owns it. They have a lot of other things on their plate that they can take care of in order to do a good job. But there really is, and this is something I talk about with business, there really is nobody who has any real compelling interest in doing well, in YouTube streaming doing well right now with this vacancy at YouTube. And until YouTube actually puts someone in this position who actually owns it, I expect YouTube streaming to stagnate, quite frankly. I mean, the UI is already a problem to the point where if you're not an established streamer, you do like what I do, where you have your YouTube streams double as videos after the fact. And I can tell you, concurrence versus views, there is more activity on these things when people get around to watching them after the fact than where they're live. And then there's this thing where people show up, like, and then leave because they're watching something else, like it's Twitch or something like that. It's like, look, this is YouTube. The long haul is what matters more so than live events. And unfortunately, that's part of the reason why YouTube doesn't make the progress on streaming that they should, is because they don't have to. Twitch has the compelling interest in having a good streaming experience, and they're improving all over the place with their UI and all the investments they're making with their limited resources. Twitch has all of that going on because that's all that Twitch really has to stand. That's the only leg that Twitch has to stand on. They don't have what YouTube has. They don't have what Facebook has. They don't even have what TikTok has, with TikTok having recently launched TikTok Live for a limited user base. So anyways, continuing on with the recap here, let's talk about exactly what happened today. So the weekends haven't really felt like weekends because I have some stuff going on. And here is where we talk about the huge announcement that's going to have the biggest impact on this YouTube channel. So, after a month of not hearing anything, I saw the tech job that I put in for while I was out on furlough change to a lower level, entry-level position for somebody maybe who wasn't already working in IT. I sent something in for that. Talked to the hiring manager about it yet again. And she said, yeah, we revamped all of this. She sent me an email. Said, yeah, we revamped all of this. If you're still interested, go ahead and put in for that. So I'm like, what's the difference? She's like, pay, and we include training so that way you can, advance to the level and stuff along those lines. Well, the pay difference is, $10,000 a year pre-tax. It's not too big of a salary difference. The question I have with some of these white-collar jobs, though, is whether or not how much of the extra salary gets eaten up in extra expenses. So that's the big, big question. I mean, there are local versions of this job that wouldn't require me to become a regional guy that I could go for, but I think I want to get the experience with this first in order to become eligible for one of those. If, say, it turns out to be more than I want to be doing for the next 10, 20 years or what have you. But the job was revamped and the hiring manager contacted me again and I put in for it again. Now, here's what I don't want. I don't want a month of radio silence from these people. So I'm going to up the ante. If I don't get this job, I'm leaving the company. Full stop. Because, I mean, think about the logic of all of this. I went in when I first came to the 9-to-5ers back in the 2000s. When I first started working with these people, I was just looking for a blah blah job to pay bills until something technical opened up. They created an IT support specialist position to keep me around because they needed the tech help in the building and stuff. And I thought it was just something unique they were doing. But now I found out since then that other companies have that exact job. They just blend it together with the person who drops the orders, so to speak. The person who drops the orders and runs the reports when they extract orders from their system. Something warehouses do is they clump orders together to improve efficiency. So you'll be talking about dropping batches or dropping waves or something along those lines. It's all, sometimes people even jokingly call it the bombardier, as though we're flying like a World War II plane or something. Pilot to bombardier, let her rip. So, and then of course, actually, the warehouses do have a bombardier type term, BOM, batch order maintenance, and then dropping the orders is bombing, batch order maintenance building. So I don't like using the term bomb to describe order extraction, though, because as you can imagine, in the post 9/11 world, it can cause problems if a manager is traveling remotely and you have to call them up and say, hey, the orders are stuck. If they say the bomb is stuck on a subway or something like that, they're going to have police and NHS and all or DHS and FBI or whoever else. It's going to be one heck of a response. So I'd rather just talk about dropping orders, extracting orders, or dropping orders. This whole jargon term does not play well. And from what I understand, there was a manager once who almost got arrested because the orders got stuck and they were traveling to New York. They were on a subway train, and someone heard them say over the phone, what do you mean the bomb is stuck? What he really meant was the orders were stuck, and the system wouldn't extract them properly from the order well. So, as you can imagine, he had to quickly be like, oh, shoot, and quickly tell people, no, I'm a warehouse manager. We're trying to drop orders in our system, and the system isn't working. It's a system issue. Please don't arrest me. Oh, one of the more dangerous times in terms of these managers and their trips and stuff like that. So, and we got to this tangent because I found out a couple of years ago that some of the other companies around here actually have that position. They just combined the desktop, laptop, mobile computer support with basically dropping orders and being the bombardier, as some of the buildings that I would call them. So the point is, despite all of the jobs going to India, like I satirized in my whiny millennials Plotagon cartoon all those years ago, despite tech jobs going to India in large numbers, despite IT people getting treated like garbage for years since I graduated, the whole computer information systems thing gave me the impression that maybe the tech people had a seat at the table in large companies, but unfortunately that's not always the case. Despite all the crap that's been going on, that made me open-minded enough to consider having a second set of skills besides technology, particularly with the effects of the Great Recession and everything, and being overly tenacious with jobs since then. Despite all of that, I still think there is a place for tech skills in the right place and in the right environment. And working for the right company, by the way. So not for a contracted services firm where the account holder always treats the vendor like rubbish. And then, of course, not in an environment where people with the tech skills are treated as second-class citizens, sometimes laid off and rehired as contractors. And then the company wonders why they have problems locking down their systems and not getting hit by ransomware. Now, it's just something along those lines. Now, these companies, they definitely have a lot to learn with these kinds of things. So, yeah. All right. So the good news is the big one, the elephant is out in plain view. We got to bag the elephant, so to speak. If I get this job, this is the job that gets me to shut down my channel until I figure out what I can still do. I don't know how often I'm going to be on call. I don't know where I'll have to go. I don't know how often I'll have to stay in hotels or anything because there's more travel involved with the position. But it is an IT job. It is an appropriate use for my bachelor's degree. Finally! And the best part is it's actually a real job. It's not something people are going to cobble together because they don't want to, because back then when people gave a darn about talent, they weren't so deadpanned towards the better people on their team, trying to downplay and deadpan their skills and abilities. They actually were like, whoa, we got to hold on to this guy. He's better than the people we usually get. No, it didn't take something. It didn't take something like that anymore. This is a real job. It's real IT. It's a real job. It's real IT. You respond to tickets. It's exactly the sort of thing that I should be doing with my college degree. Plain as day. It's exactly the sort of thing that I should be doing in order to not be an underemployed millennial, to get out of that stereotype. This is the big one. And I think if I don't get it, it's time to hang it up with these folks and go to a warehouse that's harder. Because what would it say logically? What would it say logically if these people didn't let me do tech work anymore? Especially when they already cut the position down to a level 1. So crack Wendell jokes if you want. Level 1 techs, blah, blah, blah. It's not necessary. It's not like those help desk positions that I saw in Massachusetts that were minimum wage, though. This is a well-paying position. Just got to find out how much of the extra salary goes into extra expenses because you're supporting multiple buildings and actually doing a decent amount of travel. Of course, I do know there's a travel reimbursement system, and I've used it before. Even with the last ITSS job that I had when I was bouncing between the buildings, if I traveled further than my normal work commute, I could claim the mileage. And I think based on this, the nearest building would be considered my home base. So for the purposes of claiming mileage, I could actually claim mileage anytime I went to the other 3 buildings. So at least in our local cluster, there's a couple others in Massachusetts that I might have to go hop on the highway for. So that's going to be a step up in terms of driving in traffic. I might have to rent some cars if I don't want to risk the beater mobile that I drive back and forth to work right now. So, or upgrade the insurance to collision or something. I don't know. I'm out in the woods. It's like, I'm out in the woods and I have an 8-minute commute. In terms of insurance, I mean, I don't take trips either. If I take a big trip, I rent a car. Or if there's no good car rentals around here like the pandemic has done, I'll rent a U-Haul truck. It's like, I'll rent a U-Haul pickup truck if I have to. But for bigger trips, like that time I went out to New York a couple of years back in the mid 2010s, I'd rented a car for that. I wasn't going to put hundreds of miles on the beater mobile for a trip like that. So, along those lines. So I wasn't going to do that. So this is the big one. And I think at this point, if I don't get this, hang it up with these folks. Go to a warehouse so there's more going on, because there's places around here that constantly need help. And by the time I'm finding out that I'm not getting the job, I will probably be in better shape, because I feel very out of shape from what happened today. Went over the folks' place. Finally made the trip that I wanted to make. And just like when I couldn't keep up with my dad on the walking track when I was 19 years old and he was 40-something or whatever, and he'd been overweight the whole time, I'd been around. So to see myself getting smoked on a walking track by an older guy like that was pretty humbling. But we basically had a repeat of that. And how do I even get to this whole thing? Why don't we just finish off the discussion about the tech stuff first? So the tech job, if this falls through, look at the logic here. The same company that actually valued me as for what I could do, that actually put together an ITSS position in the 2000s, even though they eliminated it in 2010s. But other companies are doing that, so it is a valid position that you can have in a warehouse, in a group of warehouses like this. So if I don't get this company now has basically turned around and said I'm not good enough for tech work. Bachelor's degree or no bachelor's degree, computer information systems or no computer information systems, experience in the company or no experience in the company, experience in corporate America or no experience in corporate America. It's already concerning enough that they turned the position into a level 1 from a level 2, hopefully not mixing me up with recent college grads who have no background, are going to be naive as all hell. And I'm not totally useless when it comes to technology either. Yeah, I was involved in the Windows XP era when they were running Pentium 4s into the ground, long past when they should have gotten rid of them. They basically skipped the Core 2 era. Not a lot of Core 2 duos. They bounced from Core 2s to Core I's very, very quickly because they were running Pentium 4s into the ground from the early 2000s. Most notably, and I've still got it memorized, the HP DC5100. You can look those up. Whole bunch of HP DC5100s, distant ancestors of the little net tops they use nowadays. So long history with regards to that kind of stuff. Just distant ancestors of all of that. So, yeah, sure, I was involved with Windows XP, but I've since used 7 and 10, and I'm now getting into 11. So one of the things I have on the board, upgrade Nerdovo to Windows 11 and have that be basically my first experiences with Windows 11. Of course, it's been 6 months since Windows 11 started rolling out, and apparently there are still problems with features and whatnot. The plan for Nerdovo going to Windows 11, because it is essentially an appliance, we upgrade it to Windows 11 first, and then we nuke the OS. if we have to reinstall Lenovo Vantage or something like that for system updates, we install it from the Windows Store after the fact. But by and large, I absolutely should be able to upgrade it to Windows 11, and then we shall get our first experiences with it, as well as what the UI has done, things like that, and also compare contrast Windows 10 versus Windows 11. The other thing too, what's going on over that way? I'm pointing to the camera, but it's actually a computer over there. Silver bullet right now. One of the things I want to do with my setup over here is have a 2-computer setup, have the hookups to hook up 2 computers, keep them like hooked to the pipe shelves and stuff nearby, so I can keep all the cables easy to reach. So, and then just swap them in and out, and then swap in like computers, consoles, get a second device over here, get rid of the silver bullet, bring over a Nerdovo when necessary, bring over the Turd Shiba when necessary, bring over everything where necessary, and set up a second computer over here. And so I will get my first experience. I'll unhook Nerdovo from where it is in the bedroom as the bedroom TV machine now. Bring it over here, hook it up, and use Windows 11 on a desktop. I got to find that two-port hub that I use for the keyboard and mouse things as well, so we can get that plugged in and get that all up and running for that kind of stuff. So we'll get that straightened out and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, no, I haven't just been resting on my laurels. I've been following what's going on with Microsoft. I've been following what's going on with security. I'm familiar with ransomware and also router attacks and things like that. One of the reasons why I did what I did with my routers is because I wanted something to actually get experience with. Now, I don't have access to Cisco switches or fancy corporate networking, but I know that a lot of corporate network gear, but I do know about remoting into stuff, and I know about that other stuff, and I know that third-party firmware often adds a lot of advanced features to consumer-grade routers that, manufacturers don't include, because most people using routers for like a few devices don't really care for all that fancy crap. So it would just be like reading an encyclopedia when you would be better served with a storybook, so to speak, or reading the dictionary or something like that. That old nerd hobby. Just way too much stuff going on with that. So no, I haven't been resting on my laurels. It's just a matter of there aren't a lot of opportunities to do much with technology around here, and then it's a matter of not getting treated like garbage at the interview. Like that infamous IT manager at the small plant around here that interviewed me once and basically lampooned me for most of the interview. Sitting there in a Hawaiian shirt with his feet on the desk, telling me I have no direction in life, because when people were laid off in large numbers during the Great Recession, and I read about IT people being out of work for 5 years because they sat around waiting for IT opportunities that never materialized, me being practical and picking up a warehouse background in case that happened again is somehow a bad idea, and I'm somehow not worth it as a tech guy because I was smart enough to not sit there unemployed for years. Because, it would be better, given the way HR people act, if I had just sat on my ass for 5 years as a 99er collecting as much unemployment as I could, instead of trying to get back into the effing workforce. If I had not filled in that time, we would have been talking about a year and a half of me sitting home unemployed. Living off of, so a year and a half, let's see, the maximum weeks, the people who ran out their federal supplemental unemployment during the recession were called 99ers. 52 times 1.5 is 78 weeks. So it would have been a year and a half if I hadn't been practical about it. So 78 out of 99 weeks of unemployment would have been exhausted. So it might have been per year too. But I mean, think about it. If you sat home and you didn't get a job and you didn't even try to stay working because there's nothing in my field, why wouldn't that reflect negatively on you when you went to a job interview? You look like someone who doesn't take any initiative. You look like somebody who can't stay on task, or, can't keep the whatever. It just doesn't look good either way. So for this manager to lampoon me in what's supposed to be an interview and say I have no direction in life because I was working in a warehouse because there weren't any tech opportunities, it's kind of like somebody who makes fun of a fat person working out at the gym. It's like, look, they're there. They acknowledge they have a problem. They're trying to do something about it, and you're belittling them for doing something about a problem. You know? Someone doesn't like being overweight. They hit the gym. They start working out, and you're making fun of them because of how fat they are when they're obviously actively trying to solve that very problem. So it would not have been any better if I had sat home instead of trying to get jobs that used my warehouse background during all this time. And we think about it, what would have happened with where I was in 2013? By 2017, let's just extrapolate that out a bit. So, a year and a half would pass if I was one of those idiots that didn't want to do anything except in my field. Laid off at the beginning of 2012. Assuming I got the data science job in late 2013, it's over a year and a half unemployed. I go in and I do data science till the company is bought out, and there was a crap ton of layoffs of system people. We'll assume I got laid off in 2018 again, and I sit on my ass because I'm not doing anything except what's in my field. And then this position pops up in 2022. So we're talking years of unemployment because I refuse to do anything except what my degree was for. It's like, no, you don't want that in anybody doing anything for you. You want people who are always trying to build their skill set. And I can tell you, there's two kinds of jobs you're going to get. There's jobs that you're interested in, and then there's jobs that you can get because, you're solving business pain. And I can tell you, with the effects of the Great Recession, somebody who wants to do warehouse work and doesn't mind the repetitive, redundant, dumb, dull nature of this stuff is a good thing around here. So that hiring manager, I'll bet he's not even a manager anymore. I've seen people with attitude problems get fired from the one and only decent job they can have, and then they're stuck like selling furniture the rest of their career or something. I've seen that. And I've even seen people who had what looked like successful careers belittle me and expose problems with their personality, and then I find out months or years down the road that, they were suddenly laid off. Apparently, it wasn't just me that observed that there was problems with them. Must have been HR as well. Or somebody else in leadership. But that's another discussion for another day. Let's wrap up the recap by talking about what I did today. But before we do that, let's just say, the big one, this job is the big one. Dan says, leveling up IRL. Indeed, you should. Actually, you'd say it's MMOs bleeding over into real life, because I'm basically a hybrid class now. And think about it. If there's no tech opportunities around here, I could just park it and cry about how horrible life is and there's no jobs and blah, blah, blah. Or I could see what's needed around here. Because there's a whole bunch of that's the con. That's the con of my generation. That's the bag of goods that us millennials have been sold. We were told we'd go to college, we'd graduate in a higher earning bracket, pay off our student loans, and live happily ever after, making at least $50,000 a year in 2000s money. Add inflation to that. See what it would have to be nowadays. Why not even guess that? $50,000 in 2000 is worth what today? Wow, it didn't take. I got to check out those Google speakers. I think the conversation mode isn't really working. In 2013dollars.com is what they would reference. Let's type that in, .com. In 2013dollars.com, let me just punch this into their little inflation calculator. Start year is 2000, So making $50,000 in 2000 because you're a college grad and working in tech, making $50,000 a year is worth $83,000 in change today. Almost 83,500, 83,500 today. Can we do this in reverse? Do like reverse inflation. So why don't we do some reverse inflation on this? $40,000 in 2000. 66, that's too low. So like 45,000. That's about right for the position. That's about right for the position in terms of purchasing power. Yeah, yep, that makes sense too for it. They dropped the position down to a level 1 because I'm coming back into the industry and I'm not currently in it. But we'll see if I even get picked for it. If I don't, I'm leaving the company. It's that simple. I mean, the distribution folks can teach me other stuff. It's cool. Maybe I'll like it enough to stay. But I mean, if the company that once valued my tech skills now suddenly tells me I'm not good enough, that's all I need to hear. Especially with larger competitors around here with more advancement opportunities and more other stuff needing good help. Yeah, and then you got to consider the salary range. The other IT positions I've seen around here, let me just crunch some numbers here. We're paying in the mid-20s per hour. 26 times 40, 10,040 pre-tax times 52 comes out to a salary level of $54,000 for the distribution center IT support specialist position. $54.80 before taxes, but you can easily hit the $20 an hour mark. And this will be even higher when overtime gets factored in. Because of the Great Resignation and people not sticking around, you can get to $41,600 of that. It's about $10,000 less by driving a forklift. So it's just the rising wages and whatnot is basically making work worth it no matter what it is, and bringing back the warehouse wild card. This is a thing around here, by the way. If you graduated from college with a major that didn't give you much for pay right off the bat, you'd be so tempted to just work in warehouses and make like more than you would make otherwise, especially when your cost of living increases and seniority raises kicked in. We've actually had some teachers that decided to just work in a warehouse despite their college degree because they didn't want to be a substitute teacher until a spot opened up because the teachers unions all monopolized the tenured school position jobs. So they didn't want to be a substitute teacher for a couple of years. Or how about some of those liberal arts majors or political science majors who were infamous for spending like 5 years in the 2000s after graduating not getting paid because it was all internships, and they like didn't make any money, but somehow it was putting the college degree to good use. How's that for some cognitive dissonance for you? Heard about that crap too. It's one of the reasons I wanted some hard skills involved, like say computer stuff. When I went myself. I understand this noise filter might mess up some words here and there. But anyways, so it's the big one. This job is the big one. If I don't get it, it's time to hang it up with these folks. Go somewhere. If I'm going to be doing warehouse stuff, I'm going to be doing it somewhere where there's more going on. Hopefully not too much, though. I mean, I don't want something that's actually harmful to my health at my age. But I think I could do better. The Great Resignation has me just too curious, especially with this current place's little problem with VTO all the time. So many of the points that I made during my little rant earlier about how lousy this place has gotten as an underdog employer, those points still stand. Let's talk about today. And one of the key reasons why I posted a little something on Twitter this afternoon. Am I on the right one? Yeah. Let's see here. Not the webcam. Let's link up the web browser. Where is... Oh, yeah, it helps if you actually go into browser mode. Link the web browser up to Google Chrome, and let's talk about this here. One of the best ways to maintain a proper perspective as a content creator is to watch people notably different than you and be friends with folks who aren't content creators at all. I've been a douche who takes the internet far too seriously. Gotta watch how I say far too. It sounded like fart-oo for a second there, but that might be relevant because one of the things that's gone viral on Twitter is that Markiplier's in the hospital with that condition he has that lands him in the hospital every so often, and he's like, yeah, the doctors need to see if I can fart to tell me if I need surgery or not, some kind of gastrointestinal thingy. But apparently the whole internet, or should I say Twitter in general, he has a big fan base, by the way. He's Markiplier, for Pete's sake. Basically from the PewDiePie generation of large gaming YouTubers. Does some streaming though. I remember his Let's Play videos of like AO Oni and stuff back then, back in those days. But when it trends on Twitter, whether or not Markiplier farted today, and that's like the center of your existence, because you have too much free time on your hands and you're nerding out on the internet way too much, you need to put the phone down, turn off the computer, and get yourself a life. It's about as bad as like the gossip stories in like gossip magazines in the 90s before everything went on the internet. You have like tabloids everywhere at the supermarkets. There's probably more digital stuff of that today. If I want to read the Weekly World News about some random photoshopped picture of some alien baby in some country out there, whatever, I could probably look at it that I could probably read the articles that way. Who am I kidding? This is the Weekly World News we're talking about. Just let me open up Microsoft Edge as I'm running out of browsers here. Oh, look, Microsoft Edge has updated. Why am I signed into this? I should not be signed into this. No. Put me in guest mode, please. Microsoft Edge is supposed to be my browser that nukes itself, and it had me signed in. I must not have it set up correctly. Let me see. Weekly World News, that classic supermarket tabloid. Yeah, it's like The Onion. The world's only reliable news. Inflation moves 420 to 430. What other weird things here? Blackbirds attack Kentucky. Planet Claire is real. Vampires on the loose in Chicago. Residents of Chicago are dealing with a vampire infestation. March Madness gets St. Peter fired. Planet Nibiru to collide with Earth. Oh, I remember reading about that in college, about how they thought there was another planet out there. The Planet X controversy and stuff like that. Anyways, you got this brain-rotting crap right here that you'd find in the supermarkets back then. And some of those celebrity stories, like what you'd see on TMZ nowadays, they would actually make it into the TV guide and the various TV listings things that you could buy or get. If you bought a paper, you'd get one like TV, some kind of like newsprint TV guide, the cheapo one. So, or you could subscribe to TV Guide back then. But there would actually be stories about like celebrity weddings and stuff. My dad was giving a talk once at a local evangelical group that I was involved with. And he was actually preaching a sermon, but I think giving a talk is the more comprehensive term for what specifically he was doing. He said, look, if these celebrity weddings are the center of why you live, so to speak, if you're getting through the day at work to go buy these things and read these things, you need to go get yourself a life. The song that I linked there was DC Talks Between You and Me. Speaking of evangelical stuff from my youth, DC Talk Between You, that's probably one of the best contemporary Christian songs that I ever heard growing up. It's got the most heart in it. It's about, making things right with people that you've wronged. So, of course, that's in the Bible. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. Don't give your offerings at the altar without making things right with with someone you wronged and whatnot. There's all that goody two-shoe stuff in there. But the song about Just Between You and Me, it totally sounds like, if it wasn't a Christian song, it would probably be like a, we broke up, but let's get back together kind of song. It's got a whole lot of heart and soul in it. And the music video version of it actually, it makes it a little less religious and a little more mainstream, which I'm not surprised Nashville did that with CCM back in the 90s. But it's just, there's a couple of really awesome lyrics in there. Like, I'm sorry for the words I've spoken, for I betrayed a friend. We've got a love that's worth preserving and a bond I will defend. It's very platonic in terms of the affection that it shows. But it's about friends kind of like putting their differences aside and apologizing to each other. Probably one of the best songs I heard growing up. Definitely has the most meaning and holds up probably the best out of many of the songs that I used to listen to back then. And that's why I'm still referencing it here. Kind of an interesting tie-in because I kind of went back to my roots today by visiting my folks at the place I grew up in. So back to my old hometown, back way the heck out in the woods. And after living even in this town for a couple of years, I definitely felt like I'd have to get used to it all over again if I ever went back there. So point is, my progression in terms of places I've lived has been more and more towards civilization and actually needing to develop some social skills. Though my stepmother was is a bit of a hermit, I should say. My stepmother has always been a bit of a hermit. My dad has taken influence from her. He's a bit of a hermit as well. and that's caused some problems towards the end of his career, problems getting jobs because his social skills are pretty stunted from most of what he did being out in the woods. And I can tell you right now, one of the reasons why I'm saying I've been a douche that takes the internet far too seriously is because part of my progression as a person has been away from somebody who does exactly that. I got like this in college, got like this after college, even got like this in the early days of the YouTube channel. But perspective is everything. Perspective is what keeps you from having little breakdown tweets on Twitter about how you feel like your life sucks when you're an influencer, like what I've been seeing with some of these Twitch streamers lately. Let me just be the guy that tells you where the bear pooped in the woods, so to speak. If you're a Twitch streamer and you're upset about, I don't think my life is going the way I want it to, you need to stop streaming. Yeah, and realize what you have and actually start to appreciate it. Okay, you can turn on the camera and get 1,000 subs on Twitch, 2,000, get thousands of subs on Twitch, an underdog platform, a niche platform. So, but you somehow find a way to not be happy about everything, about your ability to do that. Step away from streaming. You have very screwed up perspective. Your audience is going to catch on to that, and they're going to think you're ungrateful. So, Dan says, I think people need to go outside for 20 minutes. There's this meme going around about touching grass. I really don't care where that came from. It's stupid. The idea behind it, though, I think a better expression of you need to step away from the internet for a bit would be from the folks who did Tech Thing and Techzilla, Patrick Norton, and who was that, Shannon Morse that did the show with him? Or something like that. Or was it Veronica Belmont? I think it was Techzilla was Veronica Belmont and stuff like that. But I think it was Tech Thing. It was Tech Thing where they always said at the end of the show, be sure to do something offline. And then that's the thing, too. And it doesn't just mean shut the computer off anymore. It means get rid of the phone, like this. So, of course, people can say I'm a boomer just because I have a wallet case in the first place. Well, that's why my screens don't get scratched. As opposed to, there's an entire generation growing up where apparently it's fashionable to have a scratched up screen. It's like, no, it's like, why would you want scratches on your screen that don't need to be there? Anyways, one of the best ways to maintain a proper perspective as a content creator is to watch people notably different than you and be friends with folks who aren't content creators at all. And the reason being is because it eliminates the possibility of an echo chamber where all you listen to are people that are kissing your ass. You know, you want to listen to more people besides people kissing your ass, including the people that aren't directly talking to you. So you may think you have it bad, then you find out about some other streamers getting evicted or something like that. Yeah, and you're like, oh wait, no, maybe I don't have it so bad. Or you see them screwing up and you're like, well, I don't want to screw that up. I know they're probably so stuck up I can't tell them that they're screwing up. So, but I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to actually do better myself, and they're going to see their viewers take a hit. They're going to be crying about it, but I'll have at least learned something from it. But the second part is also important, is to be involved with folks who aren't involved with this internet stuff at all. I mean, we're talking about the internet here. We're talking about the thing in society that made the Twinkies project, if anyone's looked at that over the years. It's probably archived now. That was a 90s website. It's one of those, look, weird stuff on the internet type sites. Same thing with virtual bubble wrap, but that's been cloned in a lot of places. But the internet existed in the 90s as something of its own. It wasn't as mainstream as it is today. One of the side effects of that was people took it less seriously, including your teachers in school, who would tell you to do real research if you actually research something completely with internet sources. The internet, folks, isn't real. And people who take it too seriously are the only reason that it feels real in any way, shape, or form. But do you know how many times I've had people brigading the living daylights out of me, and I shut the computer off and step outside, and oh, look, I go to the supermarket, and unless it's a bunch of nerds walking around on their phones everywhere they go, I see, well, normal people. They don't give a darn about whatever's ripping up the internet right now. And I think this is something that people and even companies dealing with cancel culture are going to have to learn to deal with, is the fact that this is a thing now. The harassment can follow you everywhere because of smartphones, but you don't necessarily have to be constantly looking at your phone. Just say, shut the phone down for the day. Shut the phone down and don't bother with it, because there's an entire world out there that doesn't give a darn about these people that are so full of themselves thinking the internet is everything. It's like Michael Smerconish said in that thing about the Gabby Petito situation a while back. He said social media isn't real, and people need to realize that it isn't real and act accordingly. So today was the trip that I had been planning for quite some time. There's a bit of a problem because my folks came down with suspicious symptoms a couple of weeks ago, so I didn't want to get kicked out of work, because you don't have to get COVID to get kicked out on COVID quarantine, because they're very, very proactive about stuff. If you have symptoms from the list, you're out of work. If you can't explain what they are, you are out of work if you have symptoms from the list. And only in circumstances where you're COVID positive and you're out of work for a certain amount of time are you going to be able to get any sick pay, unless you blow your own sick time for that. The only way you get something like a medical leave of absence is if you're out a certain amount of days with COVID, and even that's going to be a partial amount of your wages. So the bottom line is, getting kicked out of work costs something, and it gets very expensive very quickly, hence people like me not even wanting to get COVID. Even if I'm vaccinated to the hilt, and it's just going to be like a scratchy throat for a couple of days, like it was with former President Obama and stuff like that. Even if it's going to be more of an annoyance than anything else, lost wages add up quick. A little bit of common sense here that these people screeching and hollering on the internet don't want to use. We'll get to that in the main discussion, though. So, now the weather was incredible. Better than when I originally planned it. The weather is incredible. We have dew points in Connecticut down in the 20s. It's going back up, though, so it's going to get humid again. It doesn't feel like April at all. It feels more like a really good day in March or a really good day in May. But it was very wonderful today and yesterday. Warm and dry, essentially. The brakes were squeaking on my car, and I was like, what? I just had these done not too long ago. I was like, I just had these brakes done not too long ago, and I paid a bunch of money because the rear brakes had to be completely redone because they were factory from when the car was built in 2009. So, long time, plenty of miles. Finally, the rear brakes went and had to be redone from scratch. Super expensive. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, it's probably super dry out, and there's some stuff probably got in the front brakes. Mechanic told me the front brakes were fine, so it's just there wasn't going to be any problems with that. But yeah, so just wonderful weather here. So yesterday I had a bunch of stuff I had to do. I had to get the updates on this potential tech job. Also had a doctor's appointment and other sort of stuff like that. That's why the chores still aren't done. Got to do the chores tonight when we switch back off to videos. I have a tech discussion to have about the AMD Ryzen 5700X. We'll save that for a night when I'm feeling better. We also are going to reread that monologue as well about the e-machine. We'll save that for a night when I'm feeling better, as opposed to not getting enough sleep, eating a little differently, a little too differently, and feeling weird because of it, and then going and visiting the folks. So I've got to actually get the stuff I have to get done, and then we'll finish up probably later tonight with the last part of the next tech video that's been sitting around way too long. And you know what? I have more stuff to do now. I have more hardware. I have things sitting in the box, bad, and now I've basically now I have more potential video material here. I'll have to see. I'll just have to talk with folks about it, see if they anyways, took the trip today, and it was a shock to the system getting back to this again. It was a shock to the system going that far out in the woods. The roads get very narrow. They're 2-lane, just barely, but there's no shoulder on them. So I'm creeping along like I'm 16 years old doing driver's ed all over again. And I'm like, I used to live here. I've flown down this road on my bicycle when I was a teenager, and I'm creeping up it in a little Ford Focus, of all things. 2009 Ford Focus. But from before those horrible transmissions came out in the 2010s. Yeah, 09 Focus, little Ford Focus, and I'm creeping along at 30. I'm actually doing the speed limit. 25, 30 miles an hour, because I was completely not used to the winding roads with no shoulders anymore. Fortunately, I didn't have anybody tailgating me who was actually from the area. They would have gotten real mad at me because I was putting along like a little old lady. So I'm out here in the woods where I grew up. I should be used to them, and I am not. I've been out of those woods long enough that it was an adjustment just getting used to driving around in them. And I visited the place finally. Hadn't been there in about 5 years since the little issue with my step relatives at a post-Christmas thing. And I hadn't been there with good spring, summer weather in a very long time. I'd mostly been going down for Christmas before I came up here, and I decided that it wasn't really worth it to go down there if my stepsisters were going to be like sneaking in booze and getting drunk behind their mother's back and stuff like that. My stepmother has traditionally been very anti-alcohol because she's dealt with abusive drunks in her time, but her stuck-up, self-centered daughters were sneaking booze and getting tipsy, so it's disrespecting your mother like that. Sorry, I have more family values than that. I believe in actually respecting your elders, so I just could not, in good conscience, continue going to those Christmas get-togethers. But during the year, schedule some time when the weather's nice, like it was today, also yesterday if I had more time, and just head on down and, visit the folks. Yeah, one of the reasons why I stayed in Connecticut instead of running off to, like, Worcester, Massachusetts or something after graduation is because I didn't want to be one of those college-educated kids who disappeared and never spoke to their parents ever again. I'd heard about that before, and they go chasing the corporate grind. And of course, it wouldn't have been good for my generation anyways because of the Great Recession, but they go chasing the corporate grind. They go try and live a better life than those that came before them, and maybe they only speak to their folks once or twice a year, if that. And then suddenly, they get the news, they get the phone call that they're in the hospital and they're not going to make it. And they think about what they could have done differently instead of looking out for number one. My dad talks about how he wishes my grandparents were still around and he could see them again. He'd pay anything for that, but it's never going to happen. I decided I didn't want to be that way. I wanted to be a responsible son and not totally vanish as though the people that raised me were people to use up and throw away. It's a little empathy, a little something this world needs more of, to not view people as a means to an end and to actually respect them as fellow human beings. So I head out there, say hello. I mean, we have our differences. My dad only has his one computer, the Lenovo we set up a couple of years ago with a Core i3 Haswell, 4 gigs of RAM, 500 gig mechanical hard drive. It was a Lenovo from the mid-2010s, so SSDs weren't as mainstream as they are today. And he's had that since we set it up for him. It's been chugging along. He's got a square screen monitor from the 2000s that he still has. He's been running into the ground. It hasn't died yet, so he didn't get rid of it. He has a Microsoft Comfort mouse. He has a keyboard that he likes, so he actually went out and bought a keyboard. Nice. There you go. He has a nice keyboard. He has a keyboard that he likes, but it's a membrane keyboard. He didn't spend a lot on like a mechanical or anything like that. He doesn't even touch type, so he wouldn't benefit very much from it. It's not a problem for him to be pushing buttons, essentially, because he two-finger types. And he has the Microsoft Comfort mouse that I tried that didn't have the DPI, and I thought it was horrible back, 20 years ago or whatever. What is it? Not 20 years ago. Like 15 years ago or so, late 2000s. He's still using it. It's all very worn in. But all he does is start it up, type some emails, maybe look at a few things on the internet and shut it off. So he has all that. But he doesn't have Wi-Fi. He doesn't believe in mobile devices. He doesn't have Wi-Fi. He doesn't really understand. He doesn't understand why mobile devices are what they are these days. Even though he has broadband, it just comes into a cable modem. Just a modem, by the way, not a gateway. He comes into a modem, little Motorola Speed something, whatever the heck it was called back 10 years ago. He has grandfathered legacy service. I think it's only 10 megabits down. So I don't even think it's synchronous. I think he's got a legacy provisioning. I should have run speed tests and tested it. But he has a legacy provisioning speed for his cable internet. And Motorola, I think about not Motorola Speed Step, that's Intel. Motorola Speed something or another is the name of it. It's the modems they made like 10 years ago. He's got one of those he's running into the ground. Doesn't have any routers, doesn't have any home networking, doesn't have anything in the way of Wi-Fi. It's just one computer to the cable connection, which also combines together with the video cable they actually still pay for. They also have landline phone service, by the way. Doesn't work very well. It's one of the reasons why he switched to cable, is because the copper wasn't good enough out there anymore to actually do dial-up with. That's what finally got him off of dial-up in the mid-2010s. So, I mean, we're having a little argument right now in his email articles that he sends out about whether or not the internet is this century's electricity, because he doesn't really understand just how baseline good internet access is to a lot of things that he's paying separate bills for nowadays. I can use Google Voice to place phone calls. The only real reason to have a cell phone is to dial 911, because there isn't an analog for 911 service over VoIP. So what am I getting? I'm barely getting any signal right now because there's a bunch of interference from everybody's Wi-Fi's and buildings and things like that. I'd probably have to go out in the yard to get a good signal. Oh, there we go. Now I'm up to like half signal on this darn thing. Oh, someone went live on Twitch. All these darn Twitch notifications. I just uninstall Twitch from the phone. Yeah. But it's just a generational difference. He doesn't really understand why I would even have one of these things in case the car broke down, as opposed to the little T-Mobile flip phone that he's been running into the ground for years and years and years. And I'm thinking, yeah, there's a benefit to being able to hook to Wi-Fi, charge it with smartphone chargers and mobile accessories, and basically even use it as a computer, like cast to the TV, use it as a TV remote, stuff along those lines, especially now that I have a smart TV, because dumb TVs aren't really a thing anymore. And now my last TV finally burnt out after years and years and years. Still got to see if I can replace the capacitors in that thing and make it function again. But I don't really know if I want a 200-watt cold cathode television for anything anymore, when like sub $300 gets you the last 1080p Samsung at 40 inches. I think I'm fine with this SKU until it gets phased out. In a sense, I'm even a laggard on televisions because I don't run 4K. So I went with 1080p one last time, and I'd buy another one of these things too if I needed another display. Not that, but they'll probably stick around for a while too, because they're the final SKU at this size that is sold out of some dark corner of Amazon somewhere. So go over there. And the last time my dad and I had a father-son get-together, he came over here, and it was still cool and all, to see him again and stuff along those lines. It was cool and all to see him again. The big thing is it broke up the monotony of never-ending streams, YouTube videos, working and sleeping and playing video games. A little bit of socialization and a little bit of changing things up every so often by either going different places or bringing in different people is a great way to do this, maintaining a proper perspective thing that I'm showing on the screen right now. So it's a really great way to not take the internet too seriously. And then, just look at what people are flipping out about on the internet. Now, did Markiplier fart today? I mean, that trended on Twitter, whether or not Markiplier farted in the hospital. So it's like, okay, we know he has whatever that condition is that lands him in the hospital every so often, but it's like, I mean, it's one thing if you're doing the ice bucket challenge for ALS or something like that. It's another thing entirely when you're starting giant arguments about whether a dress is blue or gold or whatever the heck what is this meme is, stuff like that. And then they're just flipping out about every dumb little thing as Dan just took the words right out of my mouth. Hashtag lol the internet. But I mean, we're talking about tons of people out there gawking at their phones a little too much, obsessing over whether or not a probably middle-aged YouTuber, probably he's got to be around my age or a little younger. He's he was becoming popular 10 years ago, so he's one of those older YouTubers that I reference. Twitch is a younger people platform than YouTube. Markiplier is part of the reason why. So is PewDiePie, by the way, these days. But either way, look it up. This is the look it up generation. I, of all people, shouldn't be how old is Markiplier? Microsoft Edge. 32. Okay, younger millennial. I'm thinking he's old just because he's on YouTube. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Well, it's comes with the turf. YouTube's general purpose, older folks. Hey, how old is Jenna Marbles, by the way? Oh, 30, 35. Okay, so there are some people in their 30s on here. Either way, well, the heck, Total Biscuit fought cancer in his early 30s before he passed. So, I mean, shouldn't go crazy about people's ages like that. But yeah, the internet, obsess at whether or not someone in the hospital farted today. That's what goes viral. It's laughable, but there's people that take it so insanely seriously. So insanely seriously. Doesn't need to be a thing. So I talked earlier about, this whole thing with the computers is getting a little more interesting. Here's why. While we were poking around with the Lenovo over at the folks' place, my dad and I got into a little back and forth about whether he should get an SSD. That machine was a low-end machine years ago at this point. Hard drives only have a limited service life. Exacerbated even more by still using them as a system drive. It would be better for even the hard drive with its remaining service life. It'd be better for the hard drive with its remaining service life if it were just a data drive for him, as opposed to running Windows 10. So, I told him that one of the few things not being affected by the supply chain hiccups that are raising prices with inflation and too much money chasing too few goods, as well as the corporate profiteering that's going on and being called inflation, that's another discussion entirely. I showed him a $70 500 gigabyte SSD, Samsung, major brand. Crucial SSDs were like $60. Other brands were like $50. So I'm telling them the history that I've been using SSDs. And we're talking serial ATA SSDs. I've been using them since 2010. Noticed the speed difference and never went back. It takes an incredibly bad computer for an SSD to feel like a waste of an SSD, like rubbish. Or the E-machine over there with its Celeron single core. And so, part of when he started realizing where I was coming from, and he's like, it'll make it snappier if we put it in SSD. I'm like, yep. When he started realizing that I might be onto something here, and I mean, look, your son grows up, gets into STEM. Your son grows up and gets into STEM. And every time he comes over the house, you pull him aside and, put him in the computer room to work on your computer. Why wouldn't you respect some STEM expertise from somebody like me telling you you're still using mechanical hard drive? And if we remember what happened with the E-machine, it got slower and slower as it got older until you were telling me, hurry up and fix it because the mechanical drives because the mechanical drive was giving out, as we found out when we actually looked at it afterwards. The mechanical drive was actually giving out in its old age. So it was getting slower and it was developing data errors and the whole 9 yards. And so I'm like, do you really want this to happen again? Especially when he doesn't have a backup computer, so he'd be borrowing one of the project systems that I have if he did that. The thing, too, is it's not worth it for him to buy a backup computer right now because we got to figure out the Windows 11 thing. And I should probably take a look at what's on the market right now. in terms of a backup, in terms of a computer for him to navigate the Windows 11 transition. The thing is, though, he's late 60s now. He may not even be planning on being around or on the internet in another couple of years when Windows 10 goes EOL. It may not even be worth it for him to ever buy another computer. So that's it might not even be worth it for him to ever buy another computer ever again. So that's the other thing we got to figure out as well. For the time being, though, he does seem interested in finally getting a chance to use an SSD in his main system. So I might even ask him, if he puts on some sunglasses, does he want to be in the video? If we make a video about it and stuff like that, it would be the Lenovo coming back to the Geek House and getting upgraded on site. So we'd work on that, make a tech video. You could probably see just how all this works. Whether he wants to be on camera or not is his problem. But I would definitely say he should wear a polo shirt with a collar and put on some glass. I actually do have some polarized ones he could put on that I can't wear because of my setup. He could borrow these, or actually the ones I don't use. He could borrow these, or he could borrow these. It's like in Aoni when the monster's turning everybody purple. So he has a lot of options available. These are probably more stylish. These are polarized. Oh yeah, look at that screen darkening up. He'd probably just wear these. The ambers anyway, so it doesn't actually darken anything. It just changes the color. Same as, I think these are something else altogether, but forgot what they were. But yeah, so that's what's going on with that. We're thinking of bringing the Lenovo back over to the Geek House and upgrading it to an SSD. If you make a tech video out of it, I got to ask if he wants to be on it or not. This is his only computer to do email with, so it'd probably be the case he comes up on a Friday and we have everything ready to go and we just hit the ground running. And with faster internet to download everything here, because I'm on 200 megs down now, it's probably faster than his provisioning speed. So it'd be faster to install Windows that way. It's stuff along those lines. I'm actually thinking maybe not even clone his computer over. See if we do a fresh install. See how it works with that kind of stuff, and then just set up his software later. But keep the mechanical drive. I got to actually watch my videos of the Lenovo to see what that thing looked like on the inside and stuff along those lines. Could be the case, though, if I can warm him up to the idea and introduce him to Internet Safety 101. We're doing YouTube stuff, so we're doing videos, so they're not going to be streaming, obviously. So we do have the opportunity to edit out any screw-ups he does and things like that. But it could be the case that we get him involved in the tech video. Or this is something I'm thinking about right now, actually. Sit him down in front of the computer and walk him through the steps so he can be like, I upgraded my own computer all by myself. I mean, it's basic hand tool stuff. I mean, you just have to put his glasses on. You just have to put on his glasses if he needed them, but really basic hand tool stuff. I can show him how we mount SSDs and how it's really simple. I think a lot of the issue is here, and this is one of the remaining differences between me and him when it comes to computers, is that I don't think my dad realizes it's not as much of a mythical black box inside those things as he might think. I mean, especially with today and knowing all these idiots out there are not wearing anti-static wrist straps, the hardware companies have to have changed the components so that electrostatic discharge isn't as much of a thing as it used to be. Otherwise, we should have mountains of RMAs from everybody building all their computers without using the proper tools. So I know that there are components like certain MOSFETs that are sensitive, discrete transistors that are sensitive to ESD, and integrated circuits traditionally are. But it would be interesting if we... It would be very, very interesting. I just got to refamiliarize myself with the inside of that Lenovo. And I think the way I'm going to do that is by checking out the Lenovo Weekend 2016 videos and just rewatch them and see what that thing looked like. I think the biggest issue was there was proprietary main power connector for the motherboard. We'd have to buy an adapter if we want to upgrade the power supply in that thing. But I want to switch him over to an SSD. He might not even... We'll keep the hard drive if it's still any good, but for data. But I don't know if he's even going to need it. I think the SSD will serve him quite well. and it'll be his first computer with an SSD. And the thing is, I mean, I can introduce him to the simple fact that what he's buying, if he pays me the $70 to get this thing installed, what he's doing is he's buying a transferable upgrade that can go to his, if he has to upgrade to run Windows 11, we move the SSD to the next computer. So we just move the SSD to whatever we get for him to navigate over to Windows 11 if he even has to bother with it. I can tell you, he does very light computer use. He does not use the internet the way that I do. He's not watching TV on his computer. He might watch a YouTube video here or there. He's getting into that, by the way. So I'm showing him how to, protect himself against disinformation so he doesn't turn into like the grandma meme on Facebook. But I think he might be warming up to some of the stuff that I've known for a very long time. So I'm actually wondering... dresses up all. I mean, we're talking. I'm 40. He's late 60s. So I mean, he knows he's gonna look old if he's in the video, no matter what. So wear a good shirt or something like that, or whatever. If he doesn't want it, then I'll just do it. But I'm so tempted to have him either at minimum watch how it's all done, this kind of stuff. So you know what this means, right? This means that my backlog of video stuff just got bigger. I mean, I can Amazon Prime that SSD here by tomorrow or Monday if I really wanted to. But I think what I could do, I think I want to Amazon Prime that to like a Friday delivery, so that way it's not sitting outside for however long it is with work going on and everything. So we got some time. There's nothing wrong with the computer right now. It's just running a mechanical hard drive. I just told him that if he goes to SSD, it's going to be snappier. Now he'll get this. My dad will finally be able to see what I've been seeing since 2010 or 2011. Excuse me. I think it was 2011 when I bought that 160 gig SSD for $300. 500 gigs is now under 100 now. Terabytes are, what is a 1 terabyte? I mean, I'm looking for name brand stuff, but I could probably do off brand pretty easily. Amazon.com. You probably do off brands pretty easily. 1 terabyte SSD. Remember that it was $70 for a mechanical hard drive. It was $70 for a mechanical hard drive. It says $109 now, but that would be like a Thailand flood price for a hard drive back in after the 2011 Thailand floods, which is one of the reasons why I got into SSDs, because they were more expensive. The regular drives are more expensive, so I was like, screw it. So Samsung 870 EVO serial ATA, $109.99 for 1 terabyte. If I wanted to upgrade, say, the games drive, and well, it's 2 terabytes now. $80 for 500 gigs, Crucial BX500. I gotta find where that Samsung was. That was $70 for 500 gigs. Of course, it won't benefit from the speed as much because we're talking about a Core i3 Haswell era, but it would be a great taste of a transferable upgrade from my dad. Just like how with video cards, graphics cards becoming more available. If I wanted to get an RTX 30 series, make history repeat itself, like what I did when I bought the 2K before the 3K one I thought would be expensive were supposed to come out. What do you know? Shortages everywhere, and the pandemic screwed everything up again. It's just, I did see a listing for a major brand Samsung 500 gigs for $70. I'm gonna have to check it out. But he has a 500 gig hard drive right now, and that might be too much space as it is. Could be the case. I show him like free file sync, and what we do is we set it up to where his data files he saves on the SSD, but he backs up to the mechanical drive as an in chassis backup. So that way he just opens the sync program and syncs everything over to back up his drive, to back up the stuff on his drive. And that way it'll put even less wear and tear on the hard drive, because it's literally only really being used much when he powers the system on. It runs a little bit and then turns off, and when he goes to run his backups. So you just got to see what that Lenovo can still do. But bottom line is I have more tech stuff to do. Finish what's going on with the E-machine, especially I want to experiment with my old Core 2 Duo to see if it works in that thing. That'd be funny if it did. 64-bit Windows, run some benchmarks on it, get to work on this, because if I do Amazon Prime Day, we're talking like this coming weekend, the plan is for him to come down on a Friday. We just got to watch the COVID risk. BA2 is probably going to hit Connecticut last, It's already lighting up, even under the new community level system, it's lighting up Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and New York as potentially having hospital problems if the infections keep going up. So trying to squeeze this in before we're all tenacious, trying not to get sick is part of this whole juggling process as well. Bottom line is, it's going to be cool. It's going to be really cool if he can get involved if we can make a video about it, it'll be cool. I mean, it's basically installing an SSD, Druaga type stuff. But it'd be really funny if he could really get an inside look at this YouTube hobby and see it directly for himself while I'm helping him out. Definitely, it would have to be a Friday project, though, where he's over for it and he sees everything as it happens. So lots of things going on, especially with technology stuff, which means we got to talk about this CovidActNow thing. That'll be our main discussion. Maybe a stuff from streams later. We'll just spin up. But I got stuff from streams sitting in limbo anyways, not even being released. So considering we've crossed the nearly hour and 20-minute mark, catching up on things, talking about recap, then we definitely have to, we probably should definitely consider that. We'll put in the clickable program guide as usual for all the recap discussion, but hey, I want to talk about this kind of stuff. And streams are kind of more, chronologically focused anyways. They may have main discussions that the titles are named after, but for the after the fact crowd, they can just click over to it. They don't have to sit through all this. Different things to click on for different folks with different interests. Bottom line, the Ryzen 7 5700X needs a better shake among YouTubers, and I want to be one of the YouTubers that does that. We'll save that for another night. The whole thing with the monologue, redoing it to remove the reference to fix it again, Tony, because it's offensive to some people. We'll do that again some other night when I'm feeling better. And then we have the video stuff, which there is plenty to do. And now I'm time crunched for that, especially if we want to get this SSD thing going. Well then, or I could send it to their house. There will always be someone to receive the package, and he could just bring it back up here with him. That way nobody steals it. No way you can do porch pirates when you have two retired people at home that are, one's watching the news most of the day and one's out doing yard work most of the day. Somebody will be there when the UPS truck shows up. Or maybe the Amazon vans go out that way. I don't know at this point. I'll send it as a gift. I just wonder, if you drive an electric vehicle out in my Kona hometown, will there be people like, get that Joe Biden mobile out of my town? I don't care if you're Amazon Prime. You can take your electric cars and shove it. I want my gas truck. That's another discussion entirely. Let's relax to some jazz music and let's talk about what the darn stream is about. I just get too into talking too much and go off on tangents. We'll be right back. right in time for the song change. All right. Jay's Pandemi-Rants. So CovidActNow decided to cave. It's Saturday, April 23rd, 2022. And this was the big news of the week when it comes to the pandemic. I don't really want to do any Pandemi-Rants anymore because, quite frankly, it's going to be what it's going to be at this point, especially now that it's 2022 and we have lots of more options toward when it comes to COVID than we did before. It's just a matter of modernizing the systems that we have for what to do when, what to do about quarantine, and what to do about all kinds of other stuff as well. So this is going to require a little bit of discussion because there are people out there, unfortunately, who are acting like it's still 2020. And let me just remind everybody, for those of you who may be watching that may not be familiar with it, maybe far in the future, we know how evergreen YouTube videos can get. Here's what it was like in 2020 with COVID-19. In 2020, you can watch documentaries probably to see this for yourself. In 2020, the news coverage of this virus, the original Wuhan strain, was referring to it as the novel coronavirus. Novel, of course, meaning new. This was a brand new virus that our immune systems had no idea what to do with, that it had just surfaced, There had been coronaviruses before, there'd been COVIDs before, so to speak, but this was something that our systems obviously weren't used to. We didn't have a vaccine for, and basically, you want to talk, there's an entire group of movements out there that long for a simpler time. We didn't have a lot of the modern technology we have now. Well, if you're really that curious about it, we got to experience that simpler world, and it was not a good one. When the only tools available were lockdowns and masks, because we sort of had something like remdesivir that we could use to treat the symptoms. We didn't really know what to do about this yet. Science was flying at the seat of its pants, trying to catch up to what exactly we do about this thing and what this thing can do. It's just, it wasn't good. It was horrible, quite frankly. And when we didn't even know how it spread at one point, there was all kinds of extra scrubbing of surfaces, because what if it's one of those viruses that spreads on surfaces instead of being airborne, instead of airborne transmission? It was just a mess. It was an unenviable, if anyone's nostalgic for 2020, they're nuts. It was terrible. And yet I wonder if people are nostalgic for 2020 with some of the ways they talk about how we handle like tracking numbers and tracking the virus these days and vaccinations and stuff. Now there is an entire group of people out. There is a problem right now, as of when I'm recording this, there is a problem right now with vaccines for children under 5. Moderna seems to have pulled ahead of Pfizer in the process to develop the shot that will finally allow us to give vaccines to every age group. Everyone else already has an option except for children under 5. So the home stretch of the vaccine race is to get kids under 5 vaccinated. There are parents out there that are like, come on, hurry up. We want this done. And of course, there is a process that has to be followed and whatnot. But there's a huge argument right now because the United States, the folks in charge in the U.S. have a bit of an issue with they're waiting until Pfizer's ready, even though Moderna might be ready first. And that's one of the reasons why I've preferred Moderna for things, because, again, who has the compelling interest? A company that already has lots of stuff in its portfolio. Who has the most compelling interest in building a good product that is as successful as it can possibly be? A company that has a lot of things in its portfolio already, like Viagra for Pfizer, and can actually afford to take the L if something goes wrong with it, or a company like Moderna, which is so centered around mRNA, it's their stock ticker symbol, for Pete's sake. They'd pretty much jeopardize the future of the company if they ever screwed up a product. So I realize Moderna's kind of the invisible one underdog versus Pfizer here in the U.S. But then again, the Pfizer shot is actually BioNTech coming over to United States shores, German company, etc. You can look up the whole corporate governance thing on your own if that's what you're interested in. I went to school with some people that were interested in that stuff. Business school, baby. Woo! So I've been on Team Moderna. It was interesting when Dr. Fauci was like, "Oh yeah, I got Moderna." So like, cool. Like, big guy on TV all the time, big doctor, works with the president, preferred Moderna when he had to get his shots. Cool. All right. But like the guidance said a year ago, whatever you can get is better than nothing. And I'm wondering where it went with some of this crap that's going on with vaccines for children under 5. Why are we going to wait? Oh, to avoid public confusion. Why? Moderna wins. Pfizer catches up later. Why is that taboo to some of the powers that be if Moderna is closer to having something ready for the kids? It's like, now we're talking like it's April 23rd right now. How many more weeks of April do we have? We're talking about an authorization for both in June if it gets delayed. One more full week of April starting tomorrow. Then we're into May. And at the most, it could be like 2 more months. The problem is, because we're into months for the time frame, getting kids vaccinated with 2 doses of a primary series, we're talking about the difference between whether they can get 1 or 2 doses before. And don't forget, the clock is ticking on BA2, particularly here in the Northeast, where we have a lot of the community transmission map is lighting up all over the place. The schools will let out in June as well. So, yeah, it depends on when BA2 starts messing with schools and people have to go quarantine and whatnot. Oh, yeah, we dropped mask requirements, by the way. So it's just this obsession with pandemic to endemic is gone too far. Here in the Northeast, we have the most established COVID problem right now. And we even had 2 new subvariants, which are more contagious than BA2, pop up in New York a week or 2 ago. So there are things driving the higher numbers in the Northeast. Don't forget also the Northeast was one of the more robustly vaccinated parts of the country in 2021. But we know that the immunity from the shots wanes. And so the anti-vaxxers out there, with all of their screeching loudly, make something effect nonsense, did everything they could to keep attacking even after they lost. Connecticut is 95% vaccinated, at least 1 dose now. There's almost no true blue unvaccinated left in the state as a percentage of the population. It is fringe for someone to be completely anti not getting any shots. You're absolutely fringe if that's your attitude in Connecticut. And I know some folks who are, so I know they're fringe, and I shouldn't associate with them, and they don't take care of themselves, and they'll probably get me sick if I hang out too much with them, so I won't. Choose your friends wisely. Oh boy, that was a thing back in the 90s. What about your friends? Yeah, don't get caught with the wrong crowd. Heard that when I was growing up. Knew some folks that got into a lot of trouble because they didn't do that right, you know? Now, of course, you have at least your money on the line for that if you get kicked out of work on quarantine and all kinds of other rubbish like that. But anyways, the anti-vaxxers did not give up when they lost, and they did lose. Majority of the country's vaccinated. Majority of the country has at least 2 doses. So what do? What do? They go after the vaccine for kids. Oh, don't vaccinate your kids. Blah, blah, blah. They go after whatever they can still get. They attack the children's vaccine. They attack the booster shot. They do everything they can to make sure people don't stay current on their shots. And now here we are. New England, about like what? Connecticut is what? 40%, roughly about 40% of folks have gotten at least 1 booster shot. Now we're talking second boosters. So therein lies the problem. I'll even go to CovidActNow to look this up despite the issues with it. So Connecticut, they still aggregate data. They just chose to use the CDC's community levels, which have their problems, we know, especially when it comes to speed. They're like, the CDC's community levels are like photoelectric smoke detectors. They'll light up, they'll sound an alarm if something smolders, but the stuff that flares up quickly, they might not be so good at. Let's see here versus the ionizer ones. But anyways, what's Connecticut? Connecticut is at 40.7% with at least 1 booster. General availability of the vaccine in the state of Connecticut has been a thing for over a year now. 79% have done 2 doses or J&J. So when were those shots? When we saw the hospitalizations during the Omicron wave, one of the big things that kept happening was people didn't get their booster for whatever reason. whether they were conned out of it by a bunch of hateful people, they're like, oh, the shots, or for some other reason, like, couldn't find time for it, Bottom line, and of course, there's the freak out effect too, where more people get their shots when there's big infection waves going on, like we saw during Delta in Connecticut last fall, and like we saw during Omicron in the winter. But oh, look, the demand for the shots tapers off when Omicron goes into eclipse in late January. Hum de la hum. Meanwhile, I had my physical with the doctor yesterday. One of the things on my to-do list, we talk about, look, doc, 50 plus was given the green light to get a second booster shot. 40 plus has not yet, but one of the reasons why 50 plus was flagged is because a lot of people in the age group have hypertension, or not hypertension. A lot of them have a chronic condition that makes them more vulnerable to the virus. I'm like, no, especially since I know I'm going to be in a risky situation at work because people are like, oh, we don't have to wear masks anymore. Yay, COVID is over. They're going around saying that. They're going around believing that crap at work, and I'm like the only one wearing a mask most nights. So yes, I'm going to keep wearing them because the community transmission in Connecticut is too freaking high, and it's not going down anytime soon. We're going to have our Darwin moment where we watch people get sick. Because, oh, crap, how'd I get sick? Well, duh. Well, when you choose not to listen to people, you got to deal with the results of your actions and what the effects they have on others. So, anyways, bottom line, Northeast has a COVID problem right now with BA2. We were one of the highest vaccinated parts of the country a year ago, but the people that spread the disinformation didn't give up. And they found success in other ways of sabotaging the vaccine rollout by giving people reasons to not stay current on their shots, not get their kids vaccinated, and actually support other mitigations being rolled back and all kinds of other assorted nonsense like that. But that's the way that these snake oil scams work. They play with your heartstrings until you turn your brain off, and the rest is history. Let's actually link back up here and just talk about this whole situation. So yeah, we have a bit of a problem on our hands with this. But let's actually begin with CovidActNow. Let me go back to the national map and just make sure it's not popping a county on here. Sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. So the big news of the week is that CovidActNow decided to throw their lot in with the CDC's new numbers. And here's the result. A mostly green chart, but with all the crap going on in the Northeast, there are parts of the Northeast that are lighting up. And I find it interesting. Let's set everything up here. Move Firefox there, move OBS there, and let's get the darn pointer back for this one. We're going to do some scrolling, baby. So, it defaults to counties, similar to the CDC's map on COVID community levels, but you still switch to states. Oh, this is a new one. What do you know, even with the sluggishness of community levels, because now the hospitals are part of the equation, there are still Northeast states that are lighting up under the new framework. New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and now Vermont is community level high. So now we can start talking about people in Vermont putting masks back on with everything that's going on. So that's what... Based on the latest thing from the CDC, if you go to high, then you start talking about at medium, people that might be high risk might want to put their masks back on, should put their masks back on. At high, you should be talking about bringing back mask mandates. There's all this talk about a dimmer switch, essentially. If things get bad again, we'll start beefing up all the mitigations again. Okay, when's that going to happen? So now, to be fair, CovidActNow did say that they were going to do this. They said about a month or so ago that the CDC released a new framework. They were going to update the tracker that they would do. And by the way, for those of you who don't know who the heck CovidActNow is, they're a 501c3 nonprofit that aggregates federal, state, municipal data for tracking COVID more easily. The CDC has a dashboard, but it's a little slow. It's a little bloated to display the map. It's a little clunky because of all the data it's crunching. And the thing is, not all data regarding COVID is being kept at the federal level. There's also state and municipal data tracking various things, more state than municipal. But what the CovidActNow folks did was they came up with a consistent framework for reporting this stuff before community transmission even was a thing, never mind community levels. So the issue is, with the hospitals as part of the equation, like I said earlier, with regards to the problems with the new numbers, if you're involved in data science, it is incredibly important to know what goes into your numbers. If you run a factory and the factory can make 100 widgets an hour, you need to know what goes into that 100 widgets an hour. Is somebody being unsafe? Is there a potential quality issue? What's the process being followed? That's what Lean Six Sigma folks and whatnot are usually trying to do, is to look at how disciplined a place is with its processes. So when it comes to measuring what's going on and whether you should start wearing masks again or be careful around others or don't go to places and whatnot, you know, that thing that the government and a lot of people on the news are telling you about, gauge your personal individual risk, blah, 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 and make your own decisions, you know, that crap. With all that stuff that's going on right now, that's going on, what goes into your numbers? What lights things up? Why is Vermont lit up as high risk, as a high level? Why are New York, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island lit up as medium? Why is Alaska lit up? Why is Puerto Rico lit up? Know what goes in to your numbers. Previously, we talked about community transmission, and that is, although it's only for healthcare settings, we have seen people working with the president's staff in Washington who have actually been saying things like put on a mask if there's high community transmission. Why? Because community transmission will actually show you when there's a lot of tests, when there's a lot of activity. Not counting all the other things that can throw off the numbers, of course. If you have people that downplay and deadpan the pandemic that won't get tested, that can result in stealth cases like we saw during Omicron when testing couldn't keep up. And when people were like, oh, it's less severe, so I don't have to worry about it, and other crap like that. So, and then now, with all the home tests that are out there, you can basically assume that whatever you see on any map is lower than what it actually is. So there can be issues with the people in an area. There can be issues with the data. It's always more worth it to be more cautious than what these maps might tell you to do. And that's before we start talking about community levels versus community transmission. The number one problem I've had with community levels is that it's slower to move the needle. Only these states lit up with any kind of problem whatsoever in an otherwise green United States of America. And by the way, except for some data problems in Delaware, whatever, and the Northern Mariana Islands, whatever's going on with those two areas. And by the way, certain pundits and commentators are already chiming in on this, like, oh, look, they made it look like the pandemic went away during an election year. So Democrats, they're trying to be tenacious. The Democrats trying to be tenacious to look like they've made progress on the pandemic, because that's one of the things that was part of the platform in 2020, need to understand that fear of loss leads to more loss. It's better for people's well-being in general that they have the tools they need to know without waiting for the hospitals to be threatened or the healthcare system to be stressed when things are going on in their neck of the woods with regards to COVID flaring up for whatever reason, a new variant showing up, etc. And that's my fundamental issue with these community levels. They incorporate the hospitals now. It's not just about the virus anymore. It's about the threat to the healthcare system. Keep in mind, I'm not 100% opposed to the community levels. I think they're intelligently put together for the year we live in, which is 2022. It's not 2020 anymore. We have a vaccine. We have therapeutics. We have options if people get this thing. It's no longer a great unknown novel coronavirus, and the last couple of mutations in terms of their severity have gone in our favor. But the bottom line is 2022 is not 2020. We don't need to have massive lockdowns in the country when we actually now have options besides those things that threw our economy, by the way, into a self-inflicted recession that was worse than the Great Recession. The economy contracted more because of our attempts to lock down and not spread this thing when we had nothing to fight it with than it did in 2008. It's in the numbers if you look at like St. Louis Fred and stuff like that as to when the hit happened as far as numbers go. We hit ourselves harder trying to stop this virus than we did in '08. And we've rebounded since then. And now that we have some of the best vaccines in the world out there, just stay current on them, and we have other options to treat this stuff, and it's not starting from square one anymore, something like this makes sense, except for one very important issue. Besides, of course, we still need to get the darn shots available for children under 5. So finally, families that want to vaccinate can vaccinate everybody. Not have to worry about the youngest preschool age kids they have. So, and then there's the hospital thing. I have some friends in healthcare. They've been putting in lots of extra hours dealing with whatever COVID cases come their way, especially during the Delta wave and the Omicron waves. They are tired and they are exhausted and they are very, very weary of dumbasses out there telling people to not take care of themselves in the name of some intellectual point they want to make. Freedom or some belief or whatever. No, this thing's not over. Hashtag COVID is not over, like I said last time. This thing's not over. It's just a different game than it was 2 years ago. So, I have not known one single hospital that has sat on its ass while patients have flooded in with new COVID cases. We've heard the stories of stadiums being converted to add more beds, surge capacity, wards being converted. Hospitals do not sit around when they need to step up to the plate. Hospitals and the hardworking people that work there don't sit on their ass when cases go up. They try to adapt as best they can. And we saw this during the Delta wave and the Omicron wave with all the stuff that was going on with people working in hospitals. So, with that in mind, a metric that includes hospitals and their status, how threatened the hospitals are, is going to move more slowly and be slower than something that runs exclusively off of where the heck is the virus. It's like Where's Waldo, except instead of looking for Waldo, now you're looking for Where's Waldo and the page number of what page you're on or something. I don't know. I can't come up with a good analogy for this. But there are people out there, like people that are vulnerable, like immunocompromised folks, cancer patients, people that don't benefit as much from the vaccines, etc., that need to know when to hunker down because something's going on in their neighborhood. This takes too long to flag, as we're about to see. Here's the COVID community levels. Here's what the CDC uses and recommends people outside of healthcare use. We know also that some other orgs that are not involved in healthcare, like the president's staff, aren't using this. They're being stricter. What are they using? Community transmission. Oh, yeah. It's for healthcare facility use only. Oh, yeah. No, I want something that tells me where the heck the virus is going around, even if it's not resulting in more hospitalizations and deaths, because I don't want to get the damn thing. Is that such a hard concept for people to understand? Well, especially with wherever you are in the progression curve for vaccine coverage and stuff like that. Maybe you're not eligible for a second booster yet. You know, it's just like, who knows? I really think, though, that community transmission didn't get a fair shake, because a lot of the times that we were using community transmission, there really was no opportunity for any part of the country to have to make masks optional. Let's go back to the way it worked last year. If you're orange or red, you got to be wearing masks. Mask mandates, bada bing. Masks become optional at yellow or blue. Look at all the yellow and blue. This didn't exist during the Omicron wave. This didn't exist during Delta. Now it finally does, and we move away from it. Seriously. But anyways, how come you're wearing a mask? I don't know. New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, New Jersey, Long Island, Delaware even, and parts of Pennsylvania. Solid red. BA2 came to the Northeast first, just like Omicron showed up first. It's been X amount of months since Omicron swept everything. The infection immunity wanes at some point. From the data in South Dakota, who never locked down, and the southern states after Delta, I correctly predicted that the post-infection immunity bowl in the Northeast after Omicron wouldn't make it past 3 months. And the cases per 100K reflect that in Connecticut. The bowl of post-infection, the virus in Eclipse lasted about 3 months. The peak of the Omicron wave in Connecticut was in early January. It is late April now. Let's count them off. Early February, early March, early April. We're now into late April. Numbers are back up to where they were before Omicron took off, back when Delta was going around months ago. Bam. 3 months. And that would be why last time I checked with the guidance, if you got infected, you delayed your next dose by 90 days. But remember, infection immunity depends heavily on how much the thing kicked your ass. So, and where do you get a booster unless you go out of your way to get infected again? Not hard concepts to figure out, folks. Get vaccinated, get boosted, wear a mask. We have the tools. If a bunch of idiots don't want to use them, that's another discussion altogether. But yeah, community transmission. So when Connecticut turned orange, as it did weeks ago, I started wearing masks again to Walmart and stuff. And now you got, Philadelphia, should we bring back the mandate? Boston, should we bring back the mask mandate? I'm sure Providence had something happen too, but here we are. And even under the new system of community levels, I'm not even going to leave the CDC's map here. Switch over to just their community levels. I mean, they got it. It just takes a while to load because it's slow. But yeah. Upstate New York, the new variants popped up in central New York. Around here-ish, look, New York's lighting up. Vermont's lighting up. Rhode Island, whatever their problem is. Some parts of the Midwest are lighting up too. Let's go back to community transmission and do some more I told you so's. Oh yeah, remember that thing at that gridiron dinner earlier? Community transmission, DC is red. In a red zone. Puerto Rico, highly vaccinated, probably has the same problems the Northeast has. Lots of vaccinations, but is everyone current on their shots? Yeah. Red. Alaska, Hawaii, etc. Southern Florida, BA2 arrived in Miami. That lit up first. Now most of Southern Florida's red. More Central Florida's turning orange. I predict this will sweep upwards because attitudes about COVID mitigation is very different than Florida than even in New England. And even in New England, even in the Northeast, there are still problems. New York has more of a patchwork of vaccination coverage than Connecticut does. So does Massachusetts. Southern New England is the unsung hero in the vaccine rollout, but the numbers don't tell us whether they stayed current with boosters, only that 40-something% in Connecticut got them. So even the term fully vaccinated, which still means a primary series only for whatever reason, is pretty moot at this point, and the vaccination map is kind of like, yay, people took their shots at one point. It's turning historical, though. In Connecticut, the vaccine's been available to the general public for a year now. We know that the immunity wanes. We know that boosters were practically mandatory for Omicron. Many people getting hospitalized were caught without a booster. So, community transmission. Why are you wearing a mask? Well, I know I'm out in the woods in Connecticut, but BA2 is in the surrounding states, and even on the new map, it's lighting them up. New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, we're surrounded. Just like before, Connecticut, with its high vaccinations and even vaccination coverage, is going to do better than its neighboring states. Anyways, let's go to, we updated, made some changes to align with the current state of COVID and CDC guidelines. All metrics we previously tracked will continue to be available. So anyways, I thought that this would be useless when they changed over to community levels, because I know they're sluggish to flag states, or counties for that matter. Switch back to counties. So, I figured this would be problematic, and here we are. Look at the differences between community transmission telling you what's going around where. To an extent, I'm sure that home tests are dropping these down, so what we see here actually is better than what it actually is. And then there's the politics of the area. You got a bunch of people like, I got the sniffles. I don't think it's COVID, so I'm not going to get tested. There you go. Look at California. California's got something going on. California. Oh, and by the way, the Chicago area in the Midwest had a big warning in wastewater data about a month ago. Wastewater data matters because we found out very, very early on in 2020 of all years that people start, well, shedding the virus when they do their number 1s and 2s. So the virus, if people are infected, will often show up in sewage before. It's crappy science, I know. The virus will show up in sewage before people get symptomatic. So there's a big red flag around Chicago and northern Illinois, and here we are with a bunch of red over in this general area. Some orange too to round it out. So it's just it's like that old Hives song, hate to say I told you so, but here we are. Jay, why are you wearing a mask? Are you living in fear? No. The Northeast is all solid red. We have the most established BA2 problem in the freaking country. So it's out there somewhere. Ben, oh, but you're current on your shots. You just be out of work for a bit. Yeah, and lost wages get freaking expensive. We've been raising wages because of the Great Resignation. It's very easy, even in a dumb warehouse job around here, to make $20 an hour. Do the math. You lose it 20 times 8 if you're out for a day. Say you're out for 2 days getting tested and coming up with a negative PCR test before the company lets you come back to work. Or what if you have to wait until it's just like, how soon can you get tested? What's the turnaround? How many days of wages are you willing to lose? And tell me, what's more worth it? Wearing a mask, staying current on your shots, or losing that money? Wouldn't you want to do everything you can to not lose money? Especially with things getting more expensive? Hello? That's what's missing in all the arguments on the internet. Like, oh, the vaccine, the government, FJB, let's go Brandon. Joe Biden is lost in space. We got to get rid of Fauci and Walensky and blah, 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 blah. Like, forget all that national stuff. Think about how you're going to pay your bills this month if you come down with symptoms from a list that get you booted out of work. Why wouldn't you want to minimize that risk? Just considering I work a night shift with like 30, 40 people or something, and I'm the only one masked now. There are a lot of people who are vaccinated, though. I give them credit, but I don't know how current their shots are. That's the thing. Did they get their boosters? Especially when Connecticut's only 40% boosted. Connecticut, that model state for the country and how to roll out the original vaccines, now in the position it's in with boosters. Wow. That's disinformation and people being given false assurance until they find out the hard way. Look, the numbers are right here. Save the link to community transmission. Keep an eye on it for your county, and keep an eye on it for your county, and just watch this trend, see where BA2 goes and its successors, because they're out there too. There's even one called BA2121. Boy, ain't that something. All right, let's take a look at CovidActNow here. The much more, there isn't a problem. Well, at least when people were flipping out about the changes, things were more green. Now we're seeing some yellow pop up. Anyways, let's drill down. Let's take a look at how things have changed. Let's go to Connecticut. So one of the big things is that the daily reported cases per 100K is now a weekly number. And I've been looking at the data points on here. If we look at this, it changes by the day. I thought it was only going to update once a week. So this is where the local politics of your area affect things. So here's the bowl I was talking about, little bowl, and the numbers doesn't last longer than 3 months. And this is actually, we're not a good state to use for that. If we actually want to take a look at South Dakota for that kind of data. Bounce out of here, but bounce, bounce. South Dakota, Governor Kristi Noem infamously not shutting the state down in 2020. Actually, no, it was during 2021. So here's the post-infection immunity after UK Alpha. And then we go into a really good summer afterwards. During this dip in the summertime, MSNBC does a comparison between South Dakota and Vermont. Vermont was very highly vaccinated, while South Dakota had a little bowl going on from people that got sick previously. Didn't last more than, say, months or so. But there was a dip in general during the summer and whatnot, because we didn't have something like an Omicron that was insanely more transmissible. There was Delta that was more severe, and Delta ripped up the South first. Speaking of which, let's look at Florida. Look at Florida and Governor Ron DeSantis talking about how, there's a season of COVID in the summertime. Yeah, well, here's Delta. Here's Delta. Around Labor Day is when my cousin loses his fight with Delta after getting infected on the other side of that wave with no vaccines. By the way, his wife was very angry at the government, blah, 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 blah. And even after losing her husband to Delta, his widow still hates the darn vaccine. I found out afterwards, and that's one of the reasons why I don't speak to her. By the way, she has me blocked on Facebook. She started an argument that she couldn't handle and found out I actually knew a few things. I'm mad. I'm hitting the block button. Yeah, she's done that to others too. Okay, so Delta rips up the South late summer 2021. Everything crashes. DeSantis is like, we're better than the North, even though it was more of an issue in the North because Delta went to the North afterwards. Here's the bowl. Crash. Down by October. By October, we have a huge drop-off in cases per 100K, even when we go to just weekly and stuff. November, December, by January, here comes Omicron. Boom. There you go. So a lot of these post-infection immunity bowls don't last longer than a few months as we see the infection immunity wane. And what's there to replace it? Especially when infection immunity is very variable compared to what you get from vaccines. So that's one of the things why I don't trust it, quite frankly. I mean, we are able to engineer something. We know what the dosage is. We know the effects unless you have certain medical conditions. We do all kinds of studying and testing to make sure we know what the heck we're doing with these kinds of things. But people on the internet want to go off of their emotions or something instead. Whatever. Okay, back to Connecticut. Let's compare then versus now. So the big issue, and this is, again, the sluggishness. Apparently, the new threshold for whether there's a problem is 200 cases per 100K in a week's time. Fortunately, the data here is coming in by the day. So there are some areas that drop down to just doing weekly numbers because of local politics and stuff. So we saw this in Florida, too, with the infection rate. It wasn't split out by county. It was only done for the entire state. So the attitudes of the people you live with have a lot to do with how good the numbers are that you have to work with. Here's a post-infection immunity bowl after Omicron. The eclipse period is over. 172.7 per 100K in the span of a week. Last time we were at that was November, right before when a little bit of Delta was going around, right before Omicron started taking off. Remember, Omicron popped up on the radar in December, and we were wondering whether it was going to be here by Christmas. The interesting thing with Connecticut didn't really have a huge bump with Delta. Vaccinations in Connecticut became available to certain high-risk groups and stuff at the start of the year. General availability began in around April. President Biden and the logistics teams with Jeff Zients and the rest of them helped speed up the rollout of everything with what would have otherwise been we had to wait till May because the essential workers lost their place in line in Connecticut. So look at this. Bam. And then Delta hits, and we don't really get much but a murmur, so to speak, of case activity. That's a vaccine in action. Then boosters become a thing. People get caught with that, of course, for Omicron, highly transmissible. Now, the thing is, the change of this new setup that does this cases per 100K by week, is the exact same shape as under transmission metrics, the old daily cases per 100K. So fortunately, I thought this would only update weekly, but it doesn't explain the detail of the graph. So this is still useful for something, even though it doesn't light up until it crosses the 200 mark. The big one under the old metrics that are now here under transmission metrics, and you got to drill down to see them, is the infection rate. Every person on average infects how many other people? If it's above 1, the virus is gaining ground. If it's below 1, the virus is losing ground. We saw during the eclipse period after Omicron that things crashed down to 0.59. The best numbers in the pandemic ever. That's the combination of vaccines and infection immunity being at their peak. But things have gone back up since then. And so now with 1.21, it's actually up there with years right before Omicron when it hit 1.3. When it was completely unmitigated before the lockdowns, Connecticut flirted with the 2 mark, so it was doubling. Every one person that got infected was infecting 2 more people in addition. That thing was flying all over the place. Here come the lockdowns. Boom! Below 1. Then some of the then we let up from the hard lockdown, some activity, Vaccine comes out, beginning with first responders and others by start of the year 2021. General availability is by April. Crash! Delta variant starts creeping around but doesn't really take root until autumn. So by mid-July, here's Delta, whatever it managed to do in Connecticut, which wasn't as much as in the southern states. Down a bit after Delta, a little bit of that going around, hanging around the 1 mark, holding steady. Here's Omicron, like 1.3. Crash after Omicron, down to 0.5 something. And these numbers, by the way, there's now home testing available, so these numbers might be lower than what they actually are. Gradually comes back up as BA2 hits the Northeast, 1.24. Now, I said back when trying to plot all this out, we'd probably start seeing things issues closer to summer. So it's not even May yet. I think things are going to change even more in the month of May as we see how far BA2 goes and who it catches without their shots. I was talking with the doctor about a second booster for being high risk, even though I'm not 50 yet. So he actually recommended I try Pfizer because, there's some positive studies regarding mixing things up a bit if you've been sticking with one company a lot of the time. So, tempted to give it a shot. Still on Team Moderna for most of it. But anyways, let the doctor worry about that kind of stuff. There's the booster shot stuff right there. And look at the weight, look at the boosters. Omicron becomes more of a thing. The demand is higher. Omicron is pretty much the surge is done by February, and look, the demand tapers off. There we go. The reason why the first dose is capped at 95% is because of mathematical issues with going higher. So you have that to consider as well. So there's Connecticut. So one of the biggest change and the reason why they switched over here, besides the community things like that, here's the hospital things. And I'm wondering about how these numbers are calculated, weekly admissions and in patients with COVID. Now, if we go to a state like Missouri that had a massive Delta problem early in 2021, let me go to Missouri here. Some kind of data issue right now. Those are a bunch of zeros, right? There's a data problem with these counties, and that's why they've been turned gray. Yeah, unknown. Weekly new reported cases is the data problem going on with this. But let's take a look at the historical data for the state of Missouri. There's data problems in Kansas too a while back. Yeah, stuff not being reported. There you go. Watch the politics of your area in terms of whether people still give a darn about protecting your health. So December 20, that's cases per 100K. Let me look at these hospital things though. Because Greene County, Missouri, go to this one, was actually around Springfield, Missouri, was actually the center of early. So I don't know these hospital numbers though. I guess it's because they're scaled to the population that they don't look. So there were news stories galore from Greene County, Missouri, early on in the Delta wave, because the hospitals were running out of beds. People were getting transferred all over the place. Why is that not reflected as much in the numbers? Patients with COVID as a percentage of all beds. January 2021, why is it lower at a time when I know there's news footage out there from the spring of 2021 when this place got hit with when Missouri, the Ozarks, got hit with the Delta variant earlier than a lot of others. So that's the thing. It's like how this is calculated. I don't know if it's new and the old data might have some issues. But I'm not looking at the hospitalization data anyways, unless, of course, I've got a procedure coming up. Look at how slammed the hospitals are, etc. But yeah, so we see here we got a combination of cases per 100K versus cases per 100K, and it's mixed in with hospital stuff. It's not 100%, the virus is taking off in a certain area. The interesting thing is, if I actually go back to full cam and load up the Connecticut state dashboard for the state of Connecticut, and actually back out on CovidActNow, let me go to Florida, actually. Let me look at, around Jacksonville. Let's look at around Duval County, Florida. Let me just check those hospitalization numbers for the Delta variant. It looks like the beds. Oh, so the Florida numbers have a huge surge. Because I remember there was an outbreak in Jacksonville. Put that back on the screen. There was an outbreak in the Jacksonville area that caused a lot of problems for local hospitals. When my cousin was trying to get care, he had a lot of problems finding a hospital with room to give him the equipment he needed, and he wound up in the ICU, and he wound up intubated. Yeah, he never came off the machines either. He died hooked up to machines around Labor Day. But here it is. Here's the slammed hospitals in North Florida during the Delta variant. 2021. He was infected, end of July? Yeah, so patients with COVID as a percentage of beds. Oh, yeah, there we go. 40% of all beds. Something seems off. Well, I do know from the old ICU numbers that COVID would basically fill up the ICU when the ICU already had non-COVID patients, sometimes up to 50% of beds, and then a wave would come in and the rest of them would get full, which would cause problems for people that needed ventilators. So, yeah, I don't know about these hospital numbers all that much as to whether or not. I'm mostly looking at, and this is what a lot of people that are watching where this thing is going are looking for. They want to know when to be careful. They want to know when something like an Omicron spike is happening again, or whether there's an uptick in cases in their area. I mean, even in Connecticut, our own governor had a brush with BA2 a week or two ago. I wonder what he's doing. Well, he has all his shots, so it's probably just a thing where he worked from home for a bit. What if you don't have the option of working from home? What if you work at a job that there's no way for you to work from home? Looking back in Connecticut here. Let's see. Connecticut, COVID cases by town. Where is the one from portal.connecticut.gov? The red alert chart. So here's the interesting. Here's one of the more interesting things here. Connecticut Department of Public Health. Here's the red alert chart for Connecticut. And it's still running off of an older framework based on community transmission. So you still have 15 or more cases per 100,000 residents, flags it as red. A lot of spaghetti sauce in this one, that's for sure. Fairfield County especially. Look at the case numbers in general. Those are Omicron level numbers in Greenwich, Stamford. How about New Haven? New Haven's had lots of problems. I don't know what the deal is with New Haven. Yeah, 3 digits out there, but it's 25 rate per 100K. Cases per 100K daily. It's another thing, too, going from daily to weekly. It requires an adjustment with the numbers here. But, yeah. It's been a long day, man. Greenwich, 50 per 100K. That's still better than the southern states during Delta and Omicron, which would clear triple digits. But, yeah, New York City, of course, 8.5 million people, most populated major city in the country. Any virus that has issues with people crowding together, New York's going to be a juicy target. Oh, no more masks, by the way. Yeah. So this is from the state dashboard. This is from the state dashboard. It's still running like a community transmission chart. It doesn't really run like what the CDC has. So that's another reason, too, why I'm as cynical as I am, because I know that there are things like this. How's Hartford doing? East Hartford, 49 for 14.9. Hartford itself is 8 per 100,000 residents. They have less cases than down here in the Panhandle. Now, Bridgeport, 116, 100, Trumbull, Easton. Not too familiar with Westport. There we go. Fairfield, heading towards 200 cases in a week. This is more built up, though. You have all the people that commute to New York living around here. Greenwich, in particular, is a very rich town. You know how people say, oh, you must be rich because you're from Connecticut? Towns like Greenwich are part of the reason why people believe that stuff. Wow. Yeah, I drove through there going out to New York. First time I ever saw a Tesla charger station and more Teslas on the road. Well, first time I ever saw a Tesla Roadster in the wild, man. That's crazy. Yeah. What else is on the state dashboard? Daily data report released at 3 p.m. It's the weekend. And hello, motorcycle. PCR stuff by age groups, But the map, the big red map is really the big one. And this is what all the news folks pass around on Facebook and be like, it's over. Why are you still reporting this crap? Look at the Panhandle. Look at what's going on the closer you get to New York City. Look at what's going on around I-95. Of course, things are more populated in the West because New York's bigger than Boston. Harvard, I'm surprised, is smaller than Worcester. So interesting. Capital of the state, not as built up as an urban area as like Boston's backyard, as Worcester's often called up there in Massachusetts. So let's get back over to Connecticut on CovidActNow. So here's the situation. There's a bunch of people that think that it's useless because CovidActNow is now based on the community levels that the CDC is using. Truth of the matter is that CovidActNow has existed as an aggregator of data that's already available. So, of course, they're going to change things when the CDC decides to change things. The issue, of course, is the speed. It takes longer and it takes more virus activity to light up counties on this new map, or states for that matter, than it did under the old one. So people wanting to know when to get tenacious as quickly as possible, because this thing spreads via cloak and dagger, people get infected and don't know they have it, would still want to stick with community transmission from the CDC as the first point of contact here. So, I mean, but in my case, the Northeast has been red for weeks, and it's just getting bigger and bigger. So bottom line, I'm going to bust out the masks and watch people around me. Hopefully, the thing with the masks, though, is even if they don't keep you from getting sick, the material and everything cuts the viral load that gets to you. So that's one of the reasons why, even when people found out that folks wearing masks could still transmit it, folks are still recommending it. There's also talk about, for example, wearing an N95 if you go on a plane, because no more masks on the planes and stuff like that. So it's interesting, though. I just remember when the hospitals couldn't get enough N95s because people were hoarding them, thinking it was the apocalypse. Like back in 2020, man. But yeah. Because of this, I don't really think because of the fact that when I first looked at this, I was like, they said the old data is available. Where it is available, where is it except for an API? The transmission metrics weren't populating yet. So this was all empty. I was like, oh, it's all gone now. It's just this other stuff. Vaccinated, I don't really care anymore. It's only about whether you're current on your shots, and nothing out there. Really, I mean, this tells me we have very even coverage except for the Northeast corner. And it's better than New York, by the way. Here's New York and their little patchwork quilt of some areas more vaccinated than others. Massachusetts is in better shape. How's Vermont? Vermont's pretty decent too, but New York with its 2 new subvariants, they popped up in the central part of the state. Oh, look, lighter shades of blue. Well, maybe in 2021 this would have mattered a little more, but now that we don't know how old the shots are in terms of percentage of the population vaccinated with 1 or 2 doses, this is kind of just, here's how it went. It's kind of historical at this point. So I'm not even going to keep an eye on the vaccination status anymore. Just say, hey, stay current on your shots. Stay current on everything. And hopefully the federal guidance continues to say, oh, yeah, let's get, to allow more boosters for people so that they don't end up getting caught without one and get Omicroned again. The issue is, and this is something I've been talking about with community transmission, if most of the problem is in the Northeast, Washington, especially during an election year, can call it endemic. The whole country isn't red. There's wide swaths of America right now with lower community transmission. So this is part of the pandemic to endemic discussions that have been going on lately. That happened in Nebraska. Were they this red a couple of days ago, or did something finally make it out there? We know the upper Midwest had a problem because of waste. We know that this part of the Midwest had a problem due to wastewater data that turned red a couple of weeks ago. But the thing is, Washington is not going to tell the entire country to go nuts with masks when everything looks like this, even if we were doing things based on community transmission. So state and local governments in the Northeast need to take a very serious look at this and how they govern themselves. And there needs to be the leeway and the authority for them to bust out a mask mandate in states like New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, etc. Locally. The whole country doesn't have to do this, but in areas like the Northeast, which clearly have the biggest COVID problem right now, we need to be talking about this kind of stuff. We need to be talking about turning up the dimmer switch, as it was referred to. So you have all of that going on here in the Northeast. And then we could figure out the rest of the country later. Anyways, you have all of that going on. What was I going to say besides all that? It's even lighting up with the community levels too. But with all this going on, there needs to be conversations in this area. Doesn't make any sense for Washington to tell the entire country to take a step backward when there are still parts of the country. But again, you got to remember people and attitudes, local politicians, whether or not data is being reported properly. Do residents of, say, Kansas in these blue areas have the visibility to know when to switch back? That's part of this whole mess. Oh, yeah, and don't forget, everything on here could be lower than it actually is because of people's attitudes, local politics, the way data is collected and reported, as well as home testing, which is now widely available. Folks can get 2 sets of tests from the government for free, probably paid for by tax dollars, so might as well pick them up. So, at-home stuff. But more importantly, since we know that we can't tell the entire country to go crazy with masks again because it's just there's no justification for it. Since we can't tell since it's very much a regional thing, Northeast, parts of Florida, parts of the Midwest. The other thing we have to do is the private sector needs to wake up to this. How many people do they want to risk getting their workforce sick this summer? How many people do they want to lose on quarantine, especially if they do more business during the summertime as BA2 makes the rounds in the Northeast? So maybe we don't do one size fits all for the entire country anymore. But what about in areas where there's a problem like the Northeast? Same thing with the boosters too. If you're in an area like the Northeast, what's your timeline for staying current on your shots? Also, the Northeast should be a big reason why the under 5 shots get approved when they're ready, not when regulators decide, oh, we're going to wait for Pfizer. If Moderna finishes first, cool. Moderna goes first. Can't be showing partiality to certain companies now, can we? But yeah. And the big thing too is there is immunity out there. This case spread is not turning into hospitalizations in various areas. Also, don't forget, Western vaccines better than vaccines in other parts of the world. Like part of the Shanghai issue was more vulnerable people weren't vaccinated. So part of the problems in Shanghai, there was part of that factored into that. But then let's also not forget the regular Joe who doesn't watch all this national stuff and doesn't nerd out on these numbers. Why wouldn't you take every precaution if you're in the Northeast to not get punted out of work on quarantine? Especially if you're somewhere like where I'm at, where you don't even need to get COVID to get kicked out. You just need to have suspicious symptoms from the list. So even if it's not a huge national thing like it was with Delta and Omicron, for the areas that are being affected, we need to be talking state and local government as well as the private sector in these areas, including national companies that do business in these areas that have more of a problem, taking a very serious look. Individual risk, Okay, how much would you like to roll the dice that you won't be able to staff up because nobody wants to work for you because you're known for things like, say, Cumberland Farms? A couple of them around where I'm at are closing early every night because they can't get people to work there. Gee, I wonder if that's because people who don't care about whether or not they get you sick come in, give you an attitude, and you're not allowed to respond to them or even make them wear a mask or anything. You can't, even when we had a mask mandate in the state of Connecticut, the private sector was telling them, don't tell them if they're not wearing their mask properly, or the corporate was telling them that they can't do anything except mask up themselves. By the way, the numbers on masking. Masking is best when everybody does it. There's a benefit for one-way masking, but it's not the same as when everybody's doing it. There's numbers on that and everything. I guess there'll be an uptick in N95s being sold then for people that still want to do the right thing. But don't forget, look at the sabotage that's in play here. If you don't like masks, you can say, oh, look, see, it's not working very well because it's one-way masking, voluntary hodgepodge crap. Like we saw in 2020. Where the only response that did anything against this thing was a unified, aggressive response. When it was left as a hodgepodge of some people do it, some people don't, forget it. thing goes after the weakest link. Some people, unfortunately, even some leadership figures in this country, still apparently haven't figured that out. Anyways, we're talking about CovidActNow, not ranting in general, although it is called Pandemi-Rants. What do we have for lifetime? 2.5 hours. We're getting some good time after this. Don't like masks, get a face shield. Doesn't do the same thing. Everything just goes around the face shield. So it's... face shields are good for not getting liquids splashed in your face. It's really more a matter of what the material is, how many layers they are, and things like that. Then there's the N95s, of course, which is the nuclear option. Some of them have to be fitted, though. It's interesting. It's interesting, even with surgical masks. I mean, if they're so horrible, if they're horrible little face diapers, then the next time you get surgery done, see if you have a doctor who doesn't believe in wearing them when they've got you all cut open. Oh, you might get me infected. Oh, now you care about masks. That's interesting. So that's the running joke anyways. Let me look at Puerto Rico here. They had high vaccination, better than most of the U.S. What's going on with 487 weekly new reported cases? What's their booster demand? Oh, look at that. Well, gee, when you crowd that many people into an island, it causes problems. Oh, okay. 50% booster adoption. Not much better than Connecticut. Yet. Yeah, so 94, didn't even hit 95% at least one dose, the cap. 80%, so vaccine-wise, they're on par with Connecticut. A little bit more booster adoption, but hey, you cram those people into an island like that, well, what's it doing for hospitalizations, though? Just harder to find now. Okay, so you have that jump. Oh, there is a jump in admissions per 100K. Interesting. Well, I'll have to keep an eye on this then. Percent of beds, maybe that's what, maybe that's part of the, we'll have to keep an eye on that. Yeah, look at that, cases. And then hospitalizations. Funny how that works, isn't it? How old were the shots involved? That's the question nowadays. Especially in areas that had a robust vaccine rollout. And then you have people that act like, oh, they're all set. Because of that. No, stay on top of it and stay current. Plus, if you have any underlying conditions that compromise the effectiveness of them, talk with your doctor, and that's why there are extra doses and higher doses recommended for certain people who are immunocompromised and other stuff. Oh, look, New York City's lighting up in part of Long Island now, even under this new sluggish system. So we all complained that, oh, this was useless. I don't think CovidActNow is 100% useless. I thought it when I didn't see any data, and when I very seriously wondered if I would have to sign up for the API in order to get access to the old data again. But if you can drill down at the state or local level and see mostly the infection rate in various counties, let's look at Fairfield County where we got all this crap going on here. Infection rate is 1.14. So, okay, see, it jumped. We have problems. We've had regular problems in Fairfield County. It's actually down from the 120 it was at earlier. How about New Haven County? They turned red before the system changed. Yeah, see, they're going up to like 120 and stuff, so they're still on the rise. We might see some more activity out there as well. Fairfield County out by New York City had a big issue, though, with that kind of stuff. But it looks like it's tapering off a bit. Maybe that's just... Here's the thing, too. I mean, so Omicron is this huge spike. Let's go back to the state in general here. Hi, New York. Hi, Connecticut. What's Rhode Island's problem? Hospital capacity? I mean, this is the tiny little state where you can live on a farm like 2 miles from downtown Providence. Okay, enough of the Rhode Island jokes. Read Mock Patinkin's book a little too much. The Rhode Island Handbook, baby. Bought it in college. Devil's Frozen Lemonade, coffee milk, baby. Woo! Hey, I need to go get a drink. Let me walk over to the bubbler. All right, enough New England jokes. Okay, Connecticut. Let's see here. Here's the thing, though. Here's Omicron, giant spike. But here's UK Alpha, the last wave before the vaccines rolled out. And see ya. If BA2 turns into an alpha, I would still consider it a wave. Just because we had Omicron do this to us in the wintertime, doesn't mean that we can't have another alpha type situation. And here we are at the end of the bowl. 107, the post-infection immunity bowl. Here we are at the end of that right there. Now, this is where it gets weird. Here's 2020. We got lockdowns and masking requirements and an actual in-state mask mandate in play. Drops everything down in the summer. 2021, the mask mandate actually expired. So, and then there was the screwball guidance from the CDC where if you're vaccinated, you can take your mask off. So what did people do? The scumbags out there who didn't want to get vaccinated lied about their vaccination status because there was no vaccine passport, no real way to vet the data. And then there were the people like, it's a violation of my HIPAA rights, even though that's not what HIPAA is about, nor the scope of HIPAA, by the way. So there are people lying about there are probably undoubtedly, especially people I know around here in the woods, people lying about their vaccination status to be able to take their masks off. But even despite all of that, we had the vaccine made the rounds and was more current back then. See, you're fully vaccinated after a month. General availability begins in April. Here's May. The people that jumped on it were fully vaccinated by June. Look at that. Look at that. Despite the problems with people lying about their vaccination status to take their masks off. So, here we are going into May, and we're going in the wrong direction compared to 2020 pre-vaccine mitigation measures and 2021 vaccine mitigation and other mitigation measures in play. Are we going to have our worst summer yet? That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking. So when it comes to CovidActNow, we keep circling back to this. When it comes to CovidActNow, yeah, they cave to the CDC and this community levels thing. But the community levels thing is somewhat understandable given that it's 2022 instead of 2020. There are other ways to access community transmission, and you can even drill down and look at the infection rate if you want to see if something's taking off in your area before it starts threatening before it starts threatening the hospitals. Yeah, pharmacy thing says Dan. Walgreens also has a map as well that they're running independently at their pharmacy chains. So instead of joining the crowd that says that CovidActNow is completely useless because they changed to the CDC's community levels, I'm going to say it's nerfed. It exists in a nerfed state, and it's a secondary tool versus community transmission. Although right now, I don't know how long the Northeast is going to stay red, but if BA2 blew over and things dropped again, then, yeah, number one, I'd take the masks off and we got back to moderate or low. I'm going to still see if there's any teeth, if there's any reason to follow that old stuff from that old guidance from last year. But at the very same time, you can drill down and see the infection rate, which is probably the most useful of the old metrics. You just have to go down. If you look at a county like, say, Hartford County, where the capital is, you have to drill down. The thing is, though, if I leave this on the infection rate and I click through the counties, all I have to do is just keep scrolling, and I can see where everybody's at. How about Litchfield County, which is very beautiful this time of year, and in the fall as well. So it's a little bit extra work for 124, and I don't have a list of the infection rates on the counties, so I'm actually still thinking of signing up for their API and then querying this and making a Power Query tool to watch the infection rates without having to click to all of them. That's really the most useful thing. Well, they go over, first of all, daily new cases per 100K for transmission metrics. It's just daily instead of weekly. I mean, we've looked at the two graphs. They're the same except for the colors. You know, let me just leave my finger here and scroll up. All right. Maybe there's a vertical position difference between the two. I could just point something at it. Give me something small here. Give me something really small that tapers to a point. Let me see. Give me this USB cable here. Let me just put this to the screen. The left corner of the USB cable is where the line is. All right, it does move over a little. Yep. A little bit of difference. But December 21, there's a difference in the axes. That's why. Okay. Yeah, all right. From March, and then that's April. There's an axis difference between what's where on the axis. So they're the same shape. So cases per 100K, it's just daily versus weekly. And there are some dashboards. Don't forget the New York Times has a dashboard, including an international dashboard. So you can see where the virus is flying around in various countries like South Korea, for example. Australia's had some problems as well. And Western Europe continues to have more COVID problems than the United States and in Canada. So you have the New York Times dashboard, you have the Walgreens dashboard. Many of these other dashboards use a weekly cases per 100K instead of daily. So daily, weekly, as long as the data is being updated, and it looks like it's still being updated by the day, at least if you're in a blue state that cares about this stuff. Let's just bounce back to Connecticut here. So you can still make use of, so this is just redundant at this point. It's just daily. If you want, for intellectual trivia's sake, to know that on April 13th or April 12th, there were 17.6 cases per 100K reported in Connecticut, then fine. Positive test rate. This is more of something where a percentage of tests coming back positive for things like PCR. There's a known issue versus the Connecticut dashboard because of whether or not antigen at-home tests are included in here versus PCR tests. And of course, there's a reason to be suspicious of at-home tests because you can do them wrong to get a negative result, whether it's by accident or on purpose, if you don't want to get booted out of work. That's one of the reasons why the place where I'm at prefers you get tested via a professionally administered PCR test. I don't know about that, though. When I got a fever bug in December, right around the time Omicron was making the rounds, and I was wondering if it was Omicron, the PCR test was something I took by myself in my car. It wasn't, I haven't had a professionally administered PCR test since the other time that I was kicked out on quarantine. It didn't turn out to be COVID, of course. It was one of those semaphore sites that popped up around Connecticut for pop-up testing, where somebody would actually swab you. Then again, the people administering the tests, are they following the procedure or just putting in hours at their job? So I guess there's always questions in the numbers that, in the numbers that add things like margins of error and stuff like that, and why you want to care about statistical significance. But the positive test rate doesn't really say much except whether or not your testing is adequate. If your positive test rate got too high, it would basically mean you weren't testing enough, and there were cases escaping the testing in that area. It's a thing where if you got politicians that are like, let's just not test for it so there aren't as many positive results, the ostrich thing. If you had politicians that were doing that nonsense, then this would be in play. But for the most part, I'm looking at the infection rate is the most useful here. It's just a yardstick. It's a very basic yardstick. Above 1, it's gaining ground. Below 1, it's losing ground. This is all of Connecticut, right? Not one of the counties. Yeah, it's all of Connecticut. Above 1, it's gaining ground. Below 1, it's losing ground. It was losing ground badly in the post-infection immunity bowl after Omicron, but that's over. Now there's BA2, most dominant variant in the country, and it took over in New England first. So BA2's making the rounds, as well as some successors, included as a there's a BA3, there's a BA4, there's BA2121 even. There's even a strain called BA2121. Oh, hope 21 Savage doesn't have a problem with that. 2121. If you've heard any of 21 Savage's songs, you'll know what I'm talking about. He's a rap artist. Let's see here. Hip hop. What's it called these days? Is it called rap or hip hop or whatever it is? It's mumble rap type stuff. Trainwrecks plays that kind of stuff on his stream. But yeah, the infection rate I think is the big thing here. When I was upset about this, I said that CovidActNow had found a way to get worse than the CDC. Here's why. They have community levels by state or by county. They have vaccination by state or by county, and we know this is not as relevant as it used to be because the age of the shots is incredibly important, not just how many of the population have had a needle put in them at any time since 2020. What's missing here is something akin to community transmission. I would love to see some kind of dashboard on here where I could watch something like the infection rate. It doesn't have to be what it was before with the yellow and red and different numbers, but I would love to see something akin to community transmission on here. Now, on the CDC's tracker, I have a drop-down menu that lets me swap between community transmission and the new community levels. It's slow to change around, etc., but it's there. That does not exist on CovidActNow. It's just community levels. You have to pick a state and then drill down to watch something like the infection rate. So I'm thinking of requesting API access just to watch this. Take Tolland County, the most wooded county in the state, horse farms, Where are they at? 1.16 for an infection rate. Most of the rest of the state is around 1.2. Like, how about New London County with the sub-base, Middlesex County, 117. They're doing better than most. I've looked at them on this, but I have to keep clicking and scrolling just to see the numbers for individual counties. I can't compare the counties anymore. Here's the county. Here's all the counties, but it's only the stuff. It is only the stuff that is involved in the new measurement and what percent is vaccinated. I'd love to see infection rate be able to be compared by county on these things, and then on the national dashboard, I'd love to see the infection rate show up by state. That's probably the most useful of the legacy numbers. Call it legacy transmission if they really have to. But I want to see a map on here. I can sort by what's involved in the community numbers and see that cases per 100K are highest in Puerto Rico, and then Vermont is highest on admissions, and Washington State has the highest patients with COVID as a percent of all beds. I think the admissions per 100K for people admitted to the hospital can be somewhat useful when we get more used to it. So cases versus hospitalizations, get a ratio going between those. The issue I have with this, part of the reason why we would want to focus on the hospitals, and this is part of the justification and part of the community levels thing that I actually agree with the at-home tests and people's attitudes towards tests. The only people finding out that people have COVID when they come to the hospital are we going to find out that people had COVID. There's going to be some people that aren't going to test, or they're going to try and get away with not testing. Sadly, that includes my dad. We've had a bit of a back and forth where if him or my stepmother were to get COVID, that we got our shots, we just ride it out. Maybe we talk to the doctor, But they're like, it's going to go away short. And I'm like, no, you want to know if it's COVID. So then you get a pulse oximeter and watch your blood oxygen levels to make sure you don't have to go to the hospital. Tempted to buy him one on Amazon, like $15. Put some batteries in it, put it on your finger, make sure it doesn't go too far below 90 something. So I'm tempted to just buy him one as a gift. Maybe when I buy the SSD that he's looking to upgrade to. Get him a pulse oximeter from K-Pow or something like the one where is mine? Oh, here. I can tell. It's the only thing I have with a lanyard. Yeah, one of these things. You probably had to use them at the doctor's office. Yep. And this thing is a little, I got to clean it out. I think some finger oil is getting in the way. 98 BPM, 85 when I'm worked up like this. That's very good. Means I'm getting enough exercise. I want to get more cardio. When I get more cardio, the beats per minute drops into the 60s, the low end of the normal heart rate range. It's more of a thing when I'm doing more running around too. So it's a good way to gauge whether I'm getting enough exercise or cardio and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm thinking of getting my folks one of these things too, because this is something you want to keep an eye on. This is something you want to keep an eye on, especially if someone tests positive, because one of the reasons why people end up having to be hospitalized is not enough oxygen going to their vital organs and stuff like that. Let me switch to the other hand, see if it bugs out. This one I think I got to clean out with some alcohol. 97% on that. That's good. 97, 98. Those are good. That's good. Yeah. So the switch to the focus on hospitals is not entirely in a vacuum. The switch to the focus on hospitals is because that might be the only way left to reliably tell who has COVID when you have people not testing themselves properly, or people that are just anti-fight, that are just pro-virus. I'm sorry, there's no better way nothing else, no better way to refer to these people. They've chosen to side with the virus over humanity, and they're going to downplay what this thing can do, and it's just it's just a mess. So hospitalizations might be the only way to really keep track accurately of who's got what and stuff. So that might be something I can do with, say, hospital admissions per 100K. You have cases versus who's going to the hospital for it. Also, watch for a new variant that might land more people in the hospital, or if there's a problem with one of the vaccines versus a certain new variant that has developed immune evasion type characteristics. So these numbers could be useful, but I want a map of the old numbers, or I want to be able to choose what to watch on here, because I still have use for the infection rate. The infection rate is probably one of the most useful numbers that CovidActNow has ever had on their platform here. Just watch how far is it above or below 1. You can tell whether the virus is gaining ground, at least among the people that are testing. So assume it's worse than it actually is. It'll be tenacious like that. Because I can tell you, March was the furlough. If I had stayed working, I would have waited until Connecticut turned orange again before putting the masks back on. Folks saw me driving around in the warehouse without a mask before I went out on furlough. So I'm willing to follow that guidance. And quite frankly, go back to community transmission here. Community transmission never got a fair shake. By the time we were doing things based on community transmission, we had the Delta variant turning the country red. Then we had the Omicron variant turning the country red. And now we have post-Omicron with BA2 only in certain parts of the country with plenty of yellow and blue still on the map. I mean, we should have given it more of a chance. I think if you were in Arizona and unless you were here, you didn't have to wear your mask. That wouldn't be as big of a deal as what's going on in the Northeast right now, or in South Florida. Now, keep an eye on Florida to see how red Florida turns with Governor DeSantis and his little attitude problem. And everybody who's a fan of him in the state of Florida. Yeah. And all the screwball stuff that's happening in Florida in general. Keep an eye on Florida. And keep in mind, it took weeks for the Northeast to light up. Let's see if Florida lights up faster. I'm saving screenshots of this to my Picasa to monitor that sort of thing. Watch the timestamps and stuff like that. So, yeah, CovidActNow, they caved. They base on the CDC's new numbers. I don't think they're completely useless. I just think they exist in a nerfed state versus where they were before. And hey, what do you know? Things are getting bad enough that even under these sluggish new numbers, counties are lighting up and even entire states are lighting up. But I'll continue using community transmission first, although it doesn't tell me anything except New England's still screwed. And I can find some use for this, but it's not as useful as it used to be. And given CovidActNow's existence as a data aggregator, aggregating data to make it easier to navigate all the dashboards at the federal, state, and other levels, I really think that in terms of their mission statement, they should have a dashboard that we can set up with the numbers we want to watch, and then have it save a cookie to save that dashboard for us. So unless we clear cookies in our web browser, we can keep coming back to it. People need reliable resources, but with the weaknesses of incorporating the hospitals into the community levels, they need something that lights up quickly. So in my case, I want to know when to put the masks back on when something's going around, and not wait until my state lights up because the hospitals are threatened. So then there's people out there that are immunocompromised. It's not just a money thing, not want to get kicked out of work. They don't want to die. I think that's valid reason enough, to have some quick alert map to light up quickly when there's more virus going around. So this is still useful. I would like to see CovidActNow integrated into this somehow. Put in a legacy map for legacy transmission. I would go so far as to say that a legacy transmission map, or basically the old map they used to have, would be more useful than the vaccination progress. Because fully vaccinated, and look, it only shows up to 2 doses. Boosters aren't even part of this. CovidActNow isn't doing anybody any favors by having this instead of the old maps available so people can keep things consistent. And then how about you compare community levels with legacy transmission to see why, to try and figure out why CDC wants to do this kind of stuff in 2022 when it's not 2020 anymore, getting back to the point we made at the very, very, very beginning of the discussion. Let's wrap up and look at chat, catch up on a few things here. Mushkin, etc. can be a thing for the RAM. That's interesting. 1 terabyte for $80. $70 for a 1 terabyte hard drive was a thing back before the Thailand floods. That's my baseline for cost of storage. A $70 1 terabyte SSD means that SSDs have finally closed the traditional gap, cost gap versus mechanical drives. But that was 20. Ooh, let's look up the inflation costs. Hold on a second. In 2013dollars.com, $70 in 2011 is worth what now? That's when the floods happened. $89.47 today. So actually $90 is the target price. In terms of purchasing power parity, a $90 1 terabyte SSD would be down to the prices that I was used to with hard drives back before the Thailand floods sent everything sky high. Okay, keep that in mind. All right, I guess we have a stuff from streams from this. For live time, we got up to almost 3 hours like I wanted to. But we'll make a stuff from streams for this, and we'll put in a clickable program guide for people watching the stream replay if they wish to skip all of the recap. Now I got to figure out this Lenovo thing with my dad and how we're going to upgrade that computer to an SSD. Let's see. 1 terabyte was 100 USD a couple of years ago. We'll say that for the tech discussions too. Still have to talk about AMD Ryzen 5700X, but on the video side of things, there's stuff sitting in the box that shouldn't be sitting in the box. And I want to make a gaming video for ESO about some of the problems with the high ILPTS. Been noticing some of that kind of stuff too lately. So we have that to take a look at as well. And just move forward with all this. Don't forget the tech job as well. We got to figure that part out. See if I get that. Otherwise, where am I going? Because I want to make more money. And I'm going to do that one way or another, even if it means a harder job that requires me to shut down the channel. Because quite frankly, you know, YouTube has had its chance to be anything useful in the long term, and it just failed to be that. But that's another discussion altogether. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.